All right, folks, Parivision have crossed the first threshold. They've jumped the first hurdle. They've gotten past Podulaius Cumbria in our play-in best of one, now to take on Virtus.Pro in our best of three. Jason's quite happy because, he doesn't think that, Aegis Aurora was the team to watch in EU. And as he predicted, they ended up falling away, not being able to make it deep last week. Yeah, I'm calling you out for that, man.
You're like putting me on blast. I mean, I've been saying it privately. We're not on camera.
I didn't say you were insulting them. I just said you didn't believe that they had what it took. Does Parivision have what it takes here, though, to sneak our top spot away in EU this week?
Do I think they can?
Yes.
I'm gonna give you my honest answer. I don't think they're gonna be Virtus.Pro. I think it's gonna be a 2-0. I feel like if you're a VP or Buff and Joras before, I think being the first team signed to a major org puts a lot of pressure on you. But I feel like this is the exact opportunity that they were looking for. I don't know the logistics of their contract, but ideally getting a salary, representing an amazing organization here in Deadlock. I feel like it put a flame under them that's really pushed them to improve. And I think we've been seeing that, like Listic in particular, he's been criticized so heavily when it comes to his hero pool. He showed us a phenomenal Calico last week. I feel like VP are going to be on a warpath here for a while when it comes to EU.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them last week. They were crowned and they made a very one-sided game of it there. They really was. I don't really think we saw a scratch put on them at all. So far in the one-win bombshell tournament, they did split that one series against Podulaius Cumbria and Parivision respectively. So Virtus.Pro actually have in day 2, I think, of the tournament, they managed to win their series cleanly, but they have really been trading series against these teams. Now, we saw Parivision and Podulaius Cumbria end up not being very close at all. It's funny how Deadlock games work. You got two teams that could be evenly matched, Jason, but coming out of the draft, coming out of the laning phase, it could be really one-sided. It could be really unclose, as they say.
When you don't have the infamous Mitch Uber Leslie or ZP or DDK casting them, of course they're not going to try to put on a good show.
That's Bestie, that's so true. That is so true. Anyway, let's bring in our third, of course. DDK, you've been waiting in the wings. Time to sink our teeth into some beautiful EU action. How you doing, Handsome? Good to have you back.
Yeah, happy to be back. I don't know if we've been on, us three have been on broadcast for a while, so I'm happy to be here. Because you guys banter a lot, so I've got to be on my toes. Just, ready to catch the strays.
That is so flattering to call what Jason does bad to DDK. You're really just trying to
stop louching out at me just because someone is more handsome than you on the show now, Mitch, okay?
I need to be humbled every now and then. It's fun. I mean, I need reminders. Actually, I don't need reminders. I can't grow my beard properly. I mean, I see that every morning in the mirror, but I'm okay with that, Jason.
It's gotten better. I definitely have the worst beard out of us three, but I have the most grays, so I at least win in that case.
Okay, I mean, I'm never beating Dan in the size of the traps competition. It looks like a freaking cobra. You know what I mean? That one's just cool.
I don't even know anything with them. They just do this. It's really weird.
Yeah. No, I know. I just love.
I got no legs basically, so that's probably where you're going to win.
Oh, I see. Yeah, damn. Yeah, see, I think I prefer your way of doing it, looking like a Dorito rather than like a pear. You know what I mean? I got legs.
That's what Machine always called me, a Dorito. I hadn't thought about that before. But
yeah, there you go. Let's talk about our teams. As much as I like to talk more about you, Dan.
Let's talk about
let's jump in. Okay, so Virtus.Pro, of course. Look, roster we know really, really well. I think that they probably, like Jason pointed out, still probably the undisputed #1 team in EU for now. Again, they've been in that other tournament. They've been trading blows a fair bit. But I mean, Zergi, Sharik, Mikhail Estimov, Listic, Oberkim. Dan, this is probably not a team that needs much introduction.
No, but I do feel like we should put 7 on Zergi just for the troll factor, because I feel like, for a while, obviously, these guys are struggling, honestly, just because of how 7 didn't come online basically in the game in any timing window that made sense. And they were losing because of that. And I feel like if you looked at those games when they were struggling more over the last couple of months, it was always tied to the 7, and we were talking about it a lot. So I just want to throw that out there. But I totally agree. This team is incredible, and they are at their peak strength at the moment.
They did play in the games against Mydong. In the one-win tournament, they played 7 both maps. Is this cap, or are they just like styling on Mydong, or is this legit?
I don't know. I think 7 just doesn't have the pacing with the way that the game currently works with the updates and everything. It just doesn't really have the pacing for you to like have a strong early to mid game. And there's a lot of options that you could have there in its place. Like Wraith is such a good example, because Wraith can come online and do everything, right from the get go. So you're just missing that presence to have someone that's guaranteeing like, I have to like farm to have that like mid to late game presence potentially. But I feel like it just doesn't make as much sense. We've even seen this with Infernus, right? I feel like Infernus is a good example, because if you look at how Infernus used to be played played as to how Infernus now needs to be played. Infernus has to come online, like the builds have to reflect coming online a lot earlier and being much more a part of the fights, as opposed to being more of just like a farm-centric hero. So, and I feel like, have as good options compared to
I think 7 can still work and work pretty well, but you have to play similar to like Hydra Nation. I feel like a lot of these EU teams, well, there's just the way the EU teams play, more team fight oriented. If you look at Hydra Nation, they always have Hydration just kind of by himself farming away. And I feel like if Virtus.Pro was capable of just fighting without Zergy, and it kind of reflected that in the EU meta, Zergy could come into these fights like Hydration as later on and just demolish teams, just bulldoze them. But that's not the way EU's played out compared to NA, where you just can't do something like that just yet. Yeah. Whether or not it's just because there's just way more team fighting, or the meta isn't adapted that way, or maybe the way NA's playing is behind the optimal meta currently in the game. But I'm loving the new VP, as you're pretty much saying, DDK. Like, having Zergy play something that's more impactful early on in the game definitely has changed how they've been able to win these matches.
It feels like, yeah, you guys touched on it. I think like right now, Deadlock is really about being able to transition to a strong mid game to snowball a lead that can't be recovered. Like farming a side lane for 30 minutes just doesn't seem to be a viable strategy right now. And that felt like it was a lot of what Zergy's hero pool was, like the 7 and the Infernus and the Wraith to some degree. And it feels like you just need a bit more than that.
Yeah, one thing I'll add, I think that teams are getting a lot better at is kind of figuring out this dynamic of how many numbers can we have on the split pushes to kind of get the edge, because you want to have all of your heroes on the map doing stuff at once. And if you're a team taking initiative, like pushing a Guardian, that's going to force a response from the other team. But the other team needs to have the perfect amount of response. If they have an over response, they give up on the macro and other sides of the map, and then the team that's pushing gets an advantage in those spots. And that's kind of the push and pull. And I think that, you know, when you have like heavy jungle heroes from the early to mid game, you kind of lose the ability to kind of win in that area of the macro in a much more active early to mid game. So that's kind of like where I you know, if I'm drawing it back to like where the meta is now and how teams are getting better at macro, that's another area where I feel like, I mean, I feel like 7 in theory could be good, but if you're not farming like crazy with 7, I think you maybe fall behind going into late game. So I'm just unsure. I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, but yeah, we'll see how it turns out.
I'll say this though, Dan, the numbers don't lie here. Zergy has a 100% win rate on Wraith. He played it 8 times. On 7, he has a 37.5% win rate. So clearly, like, Wraith is working out much better for him and his team, and should probably put 7 in the back pocket for a while for sure.
Okay. Let's quickly flash your Parivision roster. We've obviously seen them in the previous game, but let's get you reacquainted with them before we dive into the draft. Parivision are Play With Me, Saf, Prestis, Taz, Litz, and Together. And we talked about it. Prestis is the one with the Grey Talon portrait here, but it was Saf on that pick that looked absolutely lights out in that last game. Hitting these arrows for probably like 500 to 800 per shot. Pretty terrifying, able to blow people up. And of course, having like, you know, multiple charges of that charge shot, being able to fire them off very quickly, was able to burst down enemy heroes in just a couple of hits. These guys looked very, very good there, but they had a really good transition into a mid game in which so much of that farm got funneled in Saf's direction. And Jason, they had a front line that were very soul fed, that set up for Grey Talon to take the game over.
And I think, ignoring the fact that like Saf played really well on Grey Talon and they made Grey Talon work for them, I think seeing them swap around heroes a bit and kind of show some depth into their pool, which I kind of talked about in the last match, is a very good sign for Parivision, because I feel like that's one of their weaker points. So seeing Saf just like pull out the Grey Talon where we expect it to be on Prestis and just dominate with it. I mean, Together was also on the Warden Overplay with me, who was on the Mirage. It's a really good adaptation into their squad, and like realizing our hero pools need to be expanded. But their hero pools do line up quite heavily with Virtus.Pro as well. So I feel like when it comes to the draft phase for them, this is probably one of the most interesting draft phases we can have between any two teams in EU and NA, because of the overlap and because of like the priority system they're going to go through of who do we want to pick up as soon as possible.
MVP's top picks right now are Warden at 16, Geist at 15, Paradox at 14, Ivy at 12. So yeah, a bit of overlap here with Parivision. We're jumping into the draft pretty much straight away, folks. It's going to be Parivision with the first ban. We're looking to see what they look to try and take out the game. We saw Sinclair banned first in that previous matchup. It will be the... Okay, wow, interesting. They go with the Viscous ban. This is not very commonly played by VP in the past. Not in DFNs anyway.
Yeah, this Viscous is really, really strong in general, though. So I guess you just want to take it out of the picture entirely. I think because we have seen more first picks happening over the last couple of weeks. So So I can see that. I could also expect a Calico ban as well, just because it just seems like now teams are starting to play it better. Even with the nerfs, I think it still has such an insane early game presence that it can be kind of scary. But we'll get the, that makes sense. First banning, or rather getting your ban on the Paradox, because obviously, taking that away from Taz, I think Taz would probably want to take that away from Michaelis. So I like that as an opening.
It certainly feels like Calico offers you some of the best bang for your buck on your like melee empowering items, because she gets into that range so easily with that leaping slash and obviously charging across from lane to lane.
Really?
So, first pick, guys.
Sorry. Yeah, because guys, I know it's heavily contested between these two teams. We see D-Mob play it a ton. We see Michaelis play it as well. But I was expecting more of like a Wraith pickup to be one of their first choices, to take that away from Zergy and then just give away the Geist into a later pick.
Yeah, like I don't want to see us get into territory where Play With Me doesn't have like a clear option and then just picks Haze. That's not what I want to see, because obviously we know he's good with the Haze, but like it's like very hard to like kind of make it work right now. So I hope we don't get to that territory. We've seen it before.
Mirage going to be picked up here first. A very safe, unassuming first pick as far as we're generally concerned. 100% pick and ban, just really solid hero, but again doesn't have I would say the tendency to take over the games, but it gives you that consistent long range gun damage that you burst down any heroes that are held in place. Pocket again going pretty early in the pick order again.
I need to check. Did they play Pocket like today? And they did play Pocket today up against One Win, where they won 2-0. And they did play Pocket against Maidong as well, where they won 2-0. So I guess I don't even know what it is about Pocket. We should ask our resident Pocket here, or at least our resident Pocket lookalike. Like, I don't know why he's seen such a rise up in terms of popularity at the moment in these matches.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the clearest answer is. I know that Pocket is still like a really awesome like playmaker and does incredible burst damage getting in and out of fights. So if you're looking for that playmaker, I mean, obviously I think the ult, I guess like in some senses nerf, but in some senses buff, also makes Pocket a bit more reliable in some of the team fights as well. So I don't know. I think Pocket's a decent and safe pick, but I do agree that there's a lot of other big picks on the tables, and I don't think you're worried about Parivision just like picking up Pocket early. So unless it's a targeted pickup, to deny it, I'm not sure why you'd take it so early.
If you target that, you lost out on Wraith and he lost out on Calico, which are like two of the most impactful heroes that we've seen Virtus.Pro use lately.
What is Zergy going to play now then? What is the...
Oh boy, it's the 7. No, I'm just kidding.
Calm down. I don't know about that one. Kelvin picked up here. Okay, so we are going to see maybe a Zergy hero picked a little bit later on in the piece. Wraith obviously taken away from them. Calico very strong. And yeah, the Pocket obviously now has some of like actually does some upfront damage with Affliction, right? There's like it does percentage of your current health, then does the dot as opposed to just pure dot. So it gives you, I guess, more damage in a smaller window. Makes that ultimate a little bit more powerful here.
I think the change his ultimate was 100% buff, because fights never lasted long enough for your Affliction to do that damage. It was more of a deterrent of like, okay, I ulted and maybe you won't push now because you're ticking with Affliction. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to use it.
That made it so good. But like people could get that with Healbane like quite easily. So I don't know if it was enough to like really like justify you just trying to bring that guy in. But
is this a great town pick coming out of Virtus.Pro with the Bebop ban here, Dan?
Potentially, I think.
Or Vindicta.
Yeah, Bebop's interesting because it does kind of help to set you up if it's out of the picture for some of those picks. But I think also teams are running into Bebops a lot more right now, and Bebops is like the better that the players get with Bebop, the easier it is for them to get and understand the timings on how they can get these pickups with the hook. I think just not having to worry about these random picks happening, I think is actually kind of an important thing, to just not have to have that headache as players get better and better with it. So I don't mind it as like a general pickup just to avoid that annoyance in the mid game.
Yamato here, of course. So we have an Ethereal Shift carrier, not unlike Calico, and definitely designed to have the same sort of presence in this game. So, but for all intents and purposes, amongst these 3 of their 4 picks, VP have their 2 solo laners essentially locked in, likely Pocket and Yamato respectively, as we've seen Mirage, join the lane on occasion, so they can leave without getting punished too much.
My bow is
and pick number 4, it is a great talent pick up. Maybe Parivision reading VP wanting to prioritize that hero after they themselves banned the Bebop.
Yeah, and it is interesting as well because Talon does have a lot of mobility in the air with the dashes and stuff like that. So I wonder if it is like more of a generic pickup, but I am worried for the front line of Parivision here right now as well. Like there's definitely, especially because like no one wants to pick Shiv anymore in Europe, so Shiv basically doesn't exist anymore.
That's true. Only in an A. That's so crazy.
Don't get me started on that. I know Young Calc just like screams to me like, why is no one in EU playing Shiv after what we saw him do with Llama Lords, which we'll see a little bit later on today. But yeah, I don't know why Shiv's not played as much in EU, and that's actually something we should maybe ask some of these teams at some point. But the holiday pickup, I saw your face, Mitch. You were just kind of confused, and kind of so was I. Obviously, as we said before, like she does act as like a pseudo budget paradox, but she did get hit with some nerfs as well in the recent patch. So still in the barrel generation.
Right. It's more like the barrel, like the consecutive barrel usage, which is fine. I think like that was something that was a bit problematic about Holiday's kit. It also like slightly nerfed the impact landing damage after using jump pad. Holiday still does what she needs to, and I do think that in the event that Paradox is banned, it gives you that option. I am a little concerned about like where the front line is supposed to be for this Parivision lineup, like especially they have chosen to ban Warden. So is it another Abrams that we might see come out in this game? Podgelias can breed to pick it against them earlier on.
I want to see a Mo. I kind of want to see a Mo and Krill here. I don't know about you, Dan.
Yeah, I'd love to see Mo and Krill. I was actually expecting VP to actually pick it up after Infernus, but they went for Lash instead because they don't really have like too much of it. They don't really have a front line really, VP. So that's interesting. We get the Ivy instead. So yeah, very light on front line in this game. Kind of balances out a little bit. Everyone's squishy, and I feel like that definitely helps Grey Talon, like because being able to burst people down is just all that much easier when you're up against a lineup like VP. Like everybody is like pretty squishy except to Kelvin, really.
It's likely a Calico though that is building more of those vitality items and is just bringing in like that utility. I would say, given what this lineup looks like. But what was so good for Parivision in the previous game, guys, is that they had this front line that was extremely hard to get past, and that's why Grey Talon was able to pop off so much. Like Saf had a lot of space. Here, it seems like you have a team that is pretty good at like setting up picks. Dice is just going to be a great objective pusher, great split pusher in general. She's going to be relevant later into the game. Wraith obviously has the potential to start this fight, so there's big telekinesis, but and it's just a sustain, and push. Like Ivy's a great alchemical fire carrier. That is all well and good, but I think the game plan here, Jason, feels different for Parivision.
So what I'm seeing here is it's like, what do they have to deal with the Lash? Like the thing is, Virtus.Pro have a very mobile team, like Mirage, Pocket, Kelvin, Yamato, and Furnace Lash, all extremely mobile around the map, extremely mobile in these fights. And in my head, I'm like, what are they going to do to stop Michaelis on Lash? And the only thing I could possibly think up for this, Dan, is Holiday and the lasso. I feel like when you see the Death Slam be charged up by Michaelis, you have to lasso him to cancel it out because they have nothing else to stop that unless you're investing in these knockdowns, silence, something else. And I don't see it as like a viable option right now, at least what their comp has.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out because I do think that's very likely why Lash was selected, is just looking at the lacking counter options that are available. So I think there's not an easy answer there. There is, at least in terms of the front line, the Geist I forgot about a little bit there that can help to provide some of the distraction for Calico, because I feel like Calico with no front line is pretty desperate sometimes because Calico is amazing at getting in and out, but if you're the only target, it's kind of a problem when you get focus fired. So I do think there's definitely some options. They've generally got better space control between the Kudzu bombs and the Geist bombs as well. So I think the objectives might be a bit easy for Parivision, but yeah, definitely a lot of potential issues for both sides.
One with keeping an eye on here. I do think that Geist obviously wants to play within her optimal range with Caesar a bit close to the front line. Zergy has a 42.86% win rate. 3 out of, I think it's like 3 wins, 4 losses, I think is the result there. So not great. Definitely have seen that Infernus take over the game, but it's just kind of rare that we really see Infernus get serious mileage. I feel like recently in DFN.
And what's kind of funny is that I feel like Infernus has only just been kind of buffed. So like when they added the charges to his flame dash, everyone kind of went wild. And honestly, it becomes a very frustrating thing to deal with when you have like rapid recharge and you can just spam those constantly to just get around the map as quick as possible. But I know, like, for instance, Buds, he plays actually still the old kind of build with him. We can do a lot of like single target damage, is very annoying when it comes to like lane in the 1v1, whereas like the dash build is more about just like kind of getting around the map and making yourself slippery. So I kind of want to see like how is Zergy actually going to build this one up, and also my eyes are going to turn toward Prestus again on the Lady Geist to see what he's going to max up. If we talked about like area control and like wave clear, maxing his essence bomb would definitely be ideal for that, because like him paired with the Kutsu bomb out of Ivy and the charge shots, like it's extremely hard for Virtus.Pro to kind of push up against you and siege against you in that sense.
They can shove for days. Very, very annoying to try and get the map set up so you can ever leave the lane right and get some ganks. Otherwise, you just trade that gank presence for damage on your Guardian, which is not always what you're looking for here. So play with me. Will be a bit of a nuisance here. This is going to be a especially volatile lane, I think. Already the Listic throwing down with Prestus. Soul Siphon comes out, but not enough damage on Listic really to make him write home about it. So we'll have to try and push all this back as Michaelis was getting punished out in the open.
I'll make my last honorary point of the early game before you guys throw me off the cast for a bit. I would keep my eyes on Saf. He's very dangerous, obviously, on the Talon, and I would expect VP to look to try to target him for the first ganks to just keep him down so that the spirit damage, that burst spirit damage, isn't going to be as threatening against all these squishies.
Yeah, and I feel like Virtus.Pro, like one of their weakest points back even when they were named buff enjoyers, was the fact that they were very susceptible to ganks early on, but their macro play was so dominant compared to every other team in EU that it didn't matter if they gave away 5-10 kills early in the match. They're still able to turn things around.
See here, of course, Listic involved in a little bit of fighting earlier. A very early healing right picked up as the expectation for the lashes that there's going to be a lot of poke coming down from the very effective guns of both the Lady Geist and the Wraith. Dimov is in that 1 versus 1 up against Together. That is what that lane has turned out to be. It's pretty close, but Dimov is taking a fair bit of damage alongside trading at length with Together. Is a Holiday, though, on the gank, already making the way towards lane number 4 now. Big damage. Nice barrel connection there on a Dimov, and of course the impact. They have enough burst here for the Holiday to secure the kill.
And I don't hate the gank actually being focused towards him either. I feel like Dimov is kind of like the rock of the team. I feel like I've never seen him have a bad match. He always does his job. He does it well. He's kind of like the unsung hero of the team in my eyes. If you're then looking at like the flashy players and keeping him behind, especially on Yamato, where we saw, was it last week with Aegis Aurora, Sonya Sniper just punishing Maidon constantly because he was able to get some feed. You keep him behind. You keep that Yamato out of being impactful earlier in the match, and you delay it as long as possible.
There we go. Listic wants to come forward again. Gonna put that poke down. Pick a card, my friend. Any card. They all do a lot of damage. This is finding it the hard way. Play with me. Laying it on thick as Listic has to give up a lot of space now.
Yeah, that slam missed. He was trying to get out of dodge there, but he hit the bridge instead. Took a little bit of extra damage. Got the healing right though. Not gonna be too worried, and not to mention him and Michaelis both have 100% win rate on their respective heroes. I think Lash has been played 3 times out of Listic, and Pocket has been played twice out of Michaelis. So definitely very understanding of how these play. And what a charge shot prediction as well, knowing that Zergy would peak right there. That's just dirty.
I mean, Saf has 3 charges this, and of course they're maxing it first to increase the spirit scaling on it. So yeah, that is terrifying. Oh, what a barrel connection. Okay, had to be a torpedo away there for the Mirage, so they didn't end up getting caught, but Sharik still gets tugged in under the Guardian. That's rough. Honestly, like, Sharik looked like he was out. He times the tornado to avoid the landing damage and still gets owned. That's brutal. Dimov, though, power slash Together falls down now, and we'll see TAS try and get involved, at least to recover. But Dimov, so reliable, he's able to get out before the Holiday turns up.
He said the double parry there too, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they finally finish it off with the melee. I do like the way that TAS actually played that engage. He uses the launch pad to save stamina. So then he also doesn't commit to one side, knowing the tornado could be used to escape, and then saves that stamina for the second he hits that lasso to pull him as far back into the garden as he can to make sure they lock down that kill. So a really good start here at TAS. He's up to almost 4K souls. He's actually leading his team right now, funny enough. But Saf hitting the 3K mark, that's where things are going to be interesting, because that owl, that global presence you have out of it. And again, it is basically like a silent bomber right now. It is so hard to hear it coming through. A great use of the trap as well to deny the retreat out of Zergy. And he has him in such good position here.
Oh, the concussive combustion. That's massive. How did Zergy get up there? Saf is not ready for that at all. You hear it coming like it's something out of the movie Jaws, but still no opportunity to respond to that. That is just a straight up outplay.
I heard that go off, and I'm like, okay, he's just using it defensively, maybe expecting Saf to go down to go for the finish.
Charge melee tech to get up there? I can't tell. Shadow transformation here. Return of shadows has to be used here. And there he is, TAS able to take that kill away. TAS together have so much bloody health after that. They were low as heck.
Well, Saf returned to lane in the meantime and got the finisher onto Zergy. So as we heard DDK talking before, expect to see a lot of the ganks over towards Saf and the pressure he can apply. But funny enough, the ganks have actually been on the other side of the map over towards Dimov to really punish him and again keep Yamato behind. 3.4k souls, almost, I mean, the lowest on the team and almost the lowest in the lobby. Actually is lowest in the lobby, if I can read correctly.
It's working. I mean, that Yamato is getting absolutely clowned on right now. Obikim, frozen shelter. Just to stave off Taz turning up in this lane. So gank unsuccessful now. Here comes the lash. Dangerous here for Taz, caught in the death slam. No! Lasso to cancel it. Mystic now under the Guardian and in deep trouble. Leaves nothing behind but a pair of steaming shoes.
I feel like we kind of called that, right? In the draft. How are they going to counter the death slam? It's the lasso. And the funny thing was, if Obi Kim didn't frozen shelter, that lasso would have been on cooldown because he was going to use it against Obi Kim, which means Listic was going to be able to come in to get the death slam off. So, you know, it kind of hurts for him, but a great smart play to TaS. And we talked about how strong TaS is as a player on the Paradox, playing 11 times. His holiday is pretty stupendous so far, I have to say.
Yeah, it's been very, very good. Up to 6k souls already here. Super active. Always looking for an opportunity to get out of the lane here. I mean, I guess it's not that threatening a lane opponent. You've only got the Mirage and the Kelvin there to have to worry about. And you can always leave your like fast pushing Ivy back there just to throw Kudzu bombs and keep the wave going your way.
Telekinesis.
Yeah, that should secure the kill. Plays me able to take care of Listic here. He's had a tough couple of minutes, I'll be honest with you. Now, opportunity to pressure Guardians in 2 separate lanes. Parivision going up a gear now, but here comes Michaelis. Appears with a flourish outside of the satchel, but goes quite low to this damage from Prestus. Ends up taking a bit of a 1v2 for a moment until reinforcements did arrive. Sharik is here, but will it be enough? Dimov able to parry that away. Around the corner, no. Is TaS able to get elsewhere? Sharik and Zergy finding kills. Saf going down. Play with me also having fallen after taking that easy kill with the telekinesis.
Bro, Demo almost pulled off the 1v2 right there. You got a huge parry onto TaS. Now Obikim's going to be under pressure right under the Guardian. Lasso comes in. He's going to be slammed down. The Gooba Stomp comes in. And Parivision picking up a huge amount of kills here.
A nice rotate there from the Ivy over towards this lane here. I mean, all of Parivision's lane 3 players just get onto that lane 4 and start to push this Guardian down here. They are going to have it. So nicely done. That's the first Guardian of the game picked up by Parivision.
This is looking, you know, I might have to take my words back. Like, Parivision are looking so good so early in the game. I mean, it's a 3K lead. It's not the biggest of leads so far, but the way they've gotten the lead, the kills they're pulling off as well, and the synergy with the rotations have been a thing of beauty here. But we do see, again, Parivision trying to keep the pressure on in lane 1 with a 2-man push. We do see Sharik actually Traveler over to defend against this. Listic's going to be coming in with the Death Slam on top of this, and they're going to be looking for some kills, but they've already lost out on Zergy.
Yeah, Zergy dies obviously in that lane 1 side of the map here. Listic wants to chase. TaS been such a problem so far. Grenade thrown down by Overkim for a little bit of extra healing. Another frozen shelter used. Trying to buy some time because it's really just the Kelvin in this lane. Litz, though, decided to head elsewhere. Saf and Play With Me able to find some huge value across the map. And now that supply drop would be headed in the direction of Dimov, who is healthy. So I think this is really just to keep this wave pushing back in the direction of Parivision. Dimov is actually heading over towards lane 3. There might be a collapse here onto the Calico of Together. We'll see how that plays out now. As Together trying to back away. Oh, the Arctic Beam slows him down. Dimov able to hit the slash here, but plenty of health to work with. Shadow Transformation has to be used, but this Calico is so damn hard to kill. The Restorative Locket, you just never expect the burst healing on it. That item is so busted if you're getting ganked and those abilities are being used en masse. And in the meantime, another VP Guardian has fallen. It is impossible to gank Together.
That's lane 1. Listic fell. They're able to get another Guardian. They're up to 3 now, which means they have a flex slot, a 6K gold lead, which can be a little bit misleading because it is obviously a lot of it coming from those 3 objectives being taken. But for Parivision here, it's about how can you use that 6K lead you have right now to build up this lead even further while still defending your own Guardians and denying those souls away from your team. And that's D-Mod just being pressured again. He cannot get going in this game, Mitch.
Litz has bought an intensifying magazine. Gun Ivy is here. Okay. Not messing around. Parivision definitely trying to manifest their early lead now and actually turn some of these items, turn some of those souls into items to keep them ahead in the game. We're seeing them come up now. Soul Shredder Bullets picked up for Zergy, but here it is. Dashes here for your Parivision roamers. So they're going to be all over the map very quickly. And big items also picked up by Play With Me, who definitely wants to emerge into a terrifying Wraith threat later on.
She's active reload as well.
Active reload, excuse me, not intensifying mag.
I mean, that's obviously it's huge. We actually even saw back in the day, like, was it melee charge on Ivy to get your ammo reset in the middle of fights so you can just automatically reload. But definitely looking to pump a ton of damage. And I would actually like to look back at the stats to see how much damage he does on average when it comes to Ivy, because it is definitely something you can't just, you know, shrug off. And we're seeing another gank come through.
Yeah, Frozen Shelter going to be used here. It's messy. Dimov is in there. Arctic Beam slowing Taz down. But the Shelter, it's enough at least to keep Virtus.Pro safe for now as they try and pressure down on this tower. Taz, good defense so far, though. Barrel starting to be tossed out. And that's going to be enough to force a VP back for the time being. I think we saw an owl come in from Saf there. Unclear what the catch is going to be. Presta's healthy enough now. They're happy to keep this charge up. They're going to dodge away from the Death Slam. That gets absolutely no value. I don't know if it was the Stone Idol or a knockdown or something similar, but that ultimately gets turned off entirely. And it's been tough for Lash out there. They've done absolutely nothing. Listic with a 100% win rate on this hero is struggling in this mid-game. Here's a life drain, of course, going to force Listic right on away. They go down to half just from that one Geist ability. It's so powerful. Listic taken down behind their own Guardian.
And they're going to get another Guardian to boot here. That's 4 for 0. Parivision have built... Oh my God, they're sitting on a huge lead. 12K. What do you do at this point? Parivision, do you force like a mid-boss right now? You know Listic doesn't have his ultimate up. You have such a massive lead. You can draw them in as long as you don't allow them to split push here, which we can see already. Task going to be going over to lane 4 to look for some pressure on a Dimov yet again. They are really hindering any way for Virtus.Pro to get any value across the map here. This is... Honestly, this is a thing of beauty, and this is a completely different Parivision from what we saw in the first match.
I think just seeing just how busted Resto Lock it is, honestly. 15 sacks, so you're going to see it used here most likely. But, sorry! Okay, well, still might be tough for Together to survive this, but they go down from like 1800, rather 800 back to like 1400, and then you have Return to Shadows, and then eventually you're going to have a Ethereal Shift. I mean, and we saw it picked up by the Geist as well, so Prestis has also invested in that item. A lot of teams fancying going in that direction here, and there's not much Zergy can do. They're going to be forced right away. No Guardians stand here right now for Virtus.Pro. They're all gone. Parivision have just lost their second, though. What is Litz looking for? Listic is low. Aha, on top of the building here. Listic eventually opts to drop down, and that is a point-blank special delivery. Prestis to finish the kill on the Lash.
I think one thing Parivision are doing really well, which I think is making our job extremely hard for the observers, is just causing chaos everywhere around the map, looking for fights constantly. So Virtus.Pro just can't really get an understanding of the situation and a way to kind of like slow the game down. Parivision are controlling the pace. They get 4 kills here. They're keeping the pressure on. They see them pushing lane 4 and lane 1 to look for some Walker play. In the meantime, pushing down to lane 2. They're keeping the fight on Virtus.Pro's side of the map to continue to deny these objectives. They still don't have a flex set unlocked, and the lead, I mean, you're looking at 12K and growing.
Yeah, at this stage of the game, it is massive. Quite often we have a minuscule lead, if at that, at this point. Together doesn't quite have the rest of those stacks right now to just burst heal themselves back up to full, but...
Oh my God.
Yep, it's
That's under a Walker, man.
Again, he's dead.
They have the resistances from the Walker, so they can be extra tanky, but it doesn't seem like Parivision got the memos. They're still able to pick up kills. Nice little stun. That could have been a parry stun coming through. That was fantastic out of Dimov.
Yeah, great kill to pick up here, but Dimov is going to be chased basically instantly, so there's no guarantee that they're getting out of that situation alive. Earn in the hands of Parivision as well. That's looking to be turned in a moment by Saf. No, is people here to contest? The Dimov is in position, and I don't know if Litz is ready for this. They try to go for the stun. Forced to back away. Covenant up the heel. Saf just turns in the urn. They're still fighting to be done, though, right here, right now. Virtus.Pro trying to interrupt, but Litz is able to get away. And they're chilling. They ult out of the fight. Dimov eventually falls.
Blitz was distracting. He was trying to keep them back so they could go for the earn turn in. And then obviously with his stone form, he's able to just survive that damage coming through. And they also get a Walker on the lane 4 after the back of getting that earn turn in. You can see VP responding with a push on lane 2 or 3 at the same time, but I don't know if they have the damage right now to take these down.
No, they don't. I mean, it's such an early Walker. It's ridiculous. 84k souls already here for Parivision. 15 minutes in. Out to clear. I respect it. There's a fight to be had though right here. Charge shot going towards Listic. Michaelis also quite close by. Risky positioning here from Saf, and they might be punished as a result of it. Listic though doesn't want to tangle here with the Grey Talon whatsoever. They'll take the Walker instead. So Virtus.Pro are trying to trade his objectives doggedly. They're going at it.
And they need to slow down. Like, this game needs to slow down so we have time to think about what's happening here. I mean, maybe we can tag in DDK to give his thoughts, because this has been such a hectic start to this game.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild, and I think a lot of it comes down to the play from Holiday on, like from Taz. Like the levels of activity was so oppressive, and it constantly forced Virtus.Pro to have to react. And so in the early game, they could just never do anything other than just react to what Taz is doing on Holiday. And so then you got this spot where they're not pressuring then anyone on VP that they should be pressuring. Sorry, anyone in Parivision they should be pressuring. And then on top of that, Taz isn't just creating that pressure, he's actually getting kills over and over again. So that level of dive and harass, I think, has just put VP in a tailspin where they just can't seem to stabilize. And the one, I think, sacrifice that has been made for Parivision with all of that pressure is you're not farming the map. You know, you'll notice that they haven't really been farming the jungle, but they've been getting so much value from objectives and kills and continued pressure that it doesn't really matter too much. So far, so good. I mean, VP need to slow the game down, bring it to more of a farm, like stabilize around the walkers. But Parivision are not giving them a chance, and they're just ahead enough that they can just take these extra pushes that if, let's say, they were 10k behind, they wouldn't be able to justify it. So I will keep them in this threat state constantly.
I will say this though, yeah, they're not farming their own jungle, but they still are technically kind of building a lead by denying what Virtus.Pro can build with these lanes. They're constantly pressuring them, punishing them, getting kills, so they miss out on farms. So yeah, I agree, and I think maybe that's where like they could have one person designated to be going for that jungle farm because they don't need all 6 to make this pressure happen. But they are using all 6 right now to push onto lane 2 and lane 3 at the same time, looking for that looking for one of the last 2 walkers remaining.
Yeah, Overkim's going to rotate now, just firing that wave in lane 2. Lane 3, that was where it's happening. Listic, supposed to be the tip of the spear. The initiator for Virtus.Pro is blown to smithereens, but KLS fares no better. And her Frozen Shelter did try and buy a little bit of time for Overkim here over at this walker, but there was only a little bit of help waiting the wings. Zergy's there, Dimov there, but I mean, do they have enough souls to be impact players in this fight? Dimov's able to force them back. Divine Barrier being used by Taz here. So Parivision happy enough with what they got there. They're going to turn this straight into a mid-boss take. 2 down on Virtus.Pro. They feel like they're confident enough to go for this. The response is going to come in, but Overkim just peeks in, has a look. VP have decided potentially just to trade the walker for this.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're seeing Sherrick go for the lane 1 walker. We can see Zergy trying to push lane 4 at the same time. There's no way they can contest this without Shadow Transformation out of Dimov, who's just now getting it online now, which is going to be too late. The Traveler also was used to get over to lane 4. They're looking for some extra damage here onto this lane 4 walker, but I don't think they're necessarily going to get it just yet because we do have 2 players in hot pursuit.
Sharik still has that available. He actually just used a TP on that side of the map. I don't know if having the ability available is going to be relevant here, but this is pretty good stuff from Overkim, buying a lot of time. The response from Parivision is to press on this lane 3 walker, and they're keeping things alive. Beautifully done by Overkim, able to force Taz back. They definitely got a little bit more than they bargained for there. And so quietly, VP trade mid-boss for 2 walkers and don't lose 1 in response.
It's not bad. I think that's a pretty good trade, and that goes back to something DDK said before. We're in the draft phase of like, you want to put just the right amount of players you need to stop some of these split pushes from happening and not overcommitting resources into some of these lanes. And we did see it was Calico, so it was Together and Play With Me, who went to lane 1 just to stop 1 player. Whereas if one of them stuck with the team, maybe they could have picked up some more kills and continue to snowball from there. So it's a little bit of a slight mistake out of Parivision, but I think a great job by Virtus.Pro to take advantage of the situation and the cards they were dealt by going for those walkers, knowing they could not contest that rejuve.
Power spikes here for Sharik, especially. Dimov was able to get a ethereal shift, so going to be pretty important in these fights to be able to shrug off this damage coming in. Owl's headed over towards lane 4, perhaps. Zerky is over there. Okay, we are pushing waves with Owl, folks, in this economy. That's how we make use of that.
Well, it's not a bad idea if you think about it. If Together with staying lane 4, it kind of keeps him hidden, and it pushes the lane out so you can kind of be a little bit more sneaky, but he's rotated back over to lane 3 in the meantime.
Taz keeping a respectful distance from that little skirmish. They're definitely aware that Dimov is a legitimate damage threat. And Together just going to stop off here, continue to buy up just that little bit more. That was a spirit armor added to their arsenal. Probably a little bit concerned about what the Yamato can do to them, I'd say. And that's an earned take here for Prestis. The turning location very deep in VP territory. And those waves that we talk about using Owl to farm them have pushed right into Amber territory. So Virtus.Pro here going to have to doggedly take this fight, but in doing so, they're going to lose more map control as these waves continue to roll in.
Well, that's the question is, do Parivision intend to actually turn this earn in, or are they using it to bait VP over towards the right-hand side of the map so that Play With Me and Saf could get another one of these walkers down? And they can see the overcommitment by VP to go towards these walkers. It means the push is going to come through, and VP, they're trying to force a fight to happen. Zergy immediately pushed into the enemy team, but you can see how quickly they can rotate it and turn this around.
That walker goes down to half as Prestis actually thrown in there as part of the airdrop. Parivision, of course, with the Rejuvenator, have every reason to want to fight right now. Deathslang going to be shrugged off by the Stone Idol of Litz, but there will be some teammates caught inside of it. Prestis is thrown to the ground. Here comes the cold fronts now as Parivision are absolutely on the back foot. Litz putting some distance between him and the rest of the surging Virtus.Pro team, but they do not want to give up this fight. Chase happening over towards the museum now, and in comes Overkim, slowing up. Play with me. Saf's already gone down. Here comes the flying cloak. Michaelis follows it up, and Virtus.Pro, as always, have found a way back into the game and are eyeing off, fortuitously, this last walker for Parivision.
And like the perfect time to have that happen. The Rejuvenator's gone for Parivision. They're not going to respawn quickly. Walkers are going to be had by Virtus.Pro here. And the one mistake I can point out in that fight, as we're for sure going to see Litz fall here, was that Tas didn't use his lasso to stop Listic. And we've given Listic kind of some crap in this match because he's been constantly just dogged on when he pops his ultimate, but he waits perfectly for that lasso to be gone. The one thing Parivision have to stop him, and he gets a great death slam opening up that turn of the fight.
They're so low. VP are very low right now. They've got to be careful. They get the walker. It's another flex spot unlocked. Can they get out back to base and ready to defend? Because this game is now even. Parivision was so far ahead in souls, and that gap is closed up quickly. Ah, nice little snipe there with the hour. Dimov is out for 40 seconds.
How did we go from Virtus.Pro having no guardians and being behind like 4-0 in objectives?
I can tell you. I will ask you a question. Parivision take a mid boss and they don't get value out of Rejuvenator, and they trade it for 2 walkers on Virtus.Pro side, who use those souls to make up like that power disparity and then win them in a straight fight.
Exactly. They were never truly that far behind once the objectives equalized between the two teams. And now we're seeing like Virtus.Pro can turn this game around here, even though they're still on the back foot here, as Parivision once again are getting aggressive. But as we saw with Virtus.Pro against one win, they can handle the aggression and they can turn it around against you.
And this VP lineup scales pretty bloody well into the late game. Yamato, of course, and this Infernus really impactful. You've got like Bullet Resist Shredder and Overkim, a lot of those items to really neutralize the tankiness of Parivision. Of course, Michaelis going to be a threat at some point, and Sharik will be able to, 3 or 4 tap people as the game goes on here. So I do like what Virtus.Pro are working with here. Play with me that we're still really fed. That Wraith can still be a factor if she can get the kind of fight that she's looking for. That probably gets harder and harder here now, dealing with a Virtus.Pro team that is very slippery, right? Who knows when Lash is coming in from? Who knows where this pocket is approaching the fight from? Is there a traveler coming in from Sharik? Are you going to try and take an engagement and then get foiled by the frozen shelter? There's a lot to be worried about for Parivision, I think, as the game goes on.
And do we have a Majestic Leap out of Listic as well? I can see Michaelis has one. I want to assume Listic has one. Okay, he actually doesn't have it, so he's not going to be going for that route. So he has to look for another opportunity, another way to get into these fights. And I don't really hate it, because he does not want to be the first one to actually go into the fights, which is kind of, I guess, counterproductive to how Lash works. But he doesn't want to be the first one caught. He wants to make sure that lasso's down and be used on a different teammate.
It might also be like this comp might be trying to counter-engage to some degree as well. Not be the ones that just sort of start off a fight. The superior stamina here, of course, means that the Lash can pretty easily evade like being caught unless they get CC'd to high heaven. They actually took the improved burst, so definitely realizing there's an opportunity here to like manifest some more damage in terms of the souls they've been able to accrue. Mid boss up in 30 buffs as well, so that is our next sort of important moment in this game. And honestly, everything hangs in the balance. VP still have one of their walkers standing, so that's like some souls in the bank.
What's a flex slot too?
Withdraw when they want to, and the flex slot. That's exactly right. And that is, at this stage of the game, that's relevant.
And I think mid boss, it's gonna not quite be relevant here. If you're Parivision, there's no way you're going for a mid boss until Dimov has used Shadow Transformation or he's dead, and Listic has Death Slammed or he's dead. Like, there's just no chance they're gonna try to go for it with those 2 players up. You just see the ethereal shift being used here. Tries to get away from the lasso. With the lasso down, that is an opportunity for them to go for an engage here. And I'm curious, will Listic actually use the Death Slam on the presses and trying to burst him down? But you have to be careful. That soul exchange is up.
Yeah, it's going to be a factor. Overkim knows that it's going to probably be coming their way at some point. Okay, Zergy was hit with the soul exchange in the end, so they've got to get out of this fight. A little bit awkward here as Zergy gets chased down. Prestus, man, I mean, you've got to know you're running into that. But it's also a question of like, what do? We just have to force the soul exchange out. That's why you want to try and 2v1 into that Lady Geist if you can, and at least secure yourself a trade. But that is not what happened for VP.
Mitch, they're going for it. This is very, very risky. Dimov is up. He has Shadow Transformation. I think they're going to use this as bait because they know the Death Slam's off is on cooldown, which means they could force a fight. You can see them immediately hit off mid boss looking for that catch. You can see them using Calico as well as Ava to give information, exactly the scouting, to give that indication of what direction they could go for the push.
Of course, you are very fast as Ava, but can be slowed down significantly by something like the Arctic Beam. So You still need to respect your opponents a little bit, but in general, can't be seen on the minimap, which is huge. And again, so we're posturing once more around mid boss, but Zergy, Jason, is back in the game now.
He's back in the game, but I'm thinking back to something you said in our first match, is that look where the souls are allocated on Parivision side, and ZP's brought up over in our chat. Play With Me has 32,000 souls. He is so far ahead of everyone individual on Virtus.Pro that he is going to become a raid boss. But just like last game with Jam side, doesn't necessarily matter how many souls you have if you get caught. So for him, he has to play safe, and they really have to be careful of this Death Slam. If Play With Me gets caught with it, those 33k souls aren't going to mean anything.
Oh, and you definitely got to be starting to, like, how early are you going to take Unstoppable then? Like, that might be a factor. Do we actually prioritize that as our first tier 4 item, potentially?
I would go Ethereal Shift, to be honest. It's cheaper, gives you a little bit of spirit power, and it can cancel out the Death Slam, and also anyone that dives into like Demov. I don't know if that is the way to go with Unstoppable, just because they don't really have too many stuns other than like the concussive combustion out of Zergy.
Yeah, fair point. I do think, like, I think to slow you up is pretty annoying, and also, you know, getting Death Slammed. I think a lot also rests on the lasso rather interaction with the Death Slam. Lasso. It's just so weird.
Where do you get the U sound from?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. Because it's 2 O's. Oh, well, I thought it was 2 O's when I was young, I think, and I still think it is. So yeah.
It's fine. I say things weird as well.
L-A-S-S-O. Lasso. There we go. All right. Mid boss now being attempted, and that's a flame dash in order to get Zergy the heck out of dodge. While this happens, though, no side lane pushing, despite the fact that they've obviously got a Mirage. Virtus.Pro have at least a good push on in their favor in lane number 4 for the time being, but both these teams pretty careful about taking the fight, and there's an opportunity for Virtus.Pro to make up that soul deficit here.
I can understand Sherrick not wanting to necessarily split push, because I feel like the time for him to use the Traveler, get into the fight, they can almost already lose the fight at that point, just that time it takes. But the upside for Parivision with Saf, you know, you talk about the Owl, we saw it before, using it to farm lanes. That can apply pressure in these lanes. He could use it to just clear out a wave coming on lane 1, so make sure that his lane 1 is pushing against them. And eventually Virtus.Pro, either they have to engage or they have to back away. And we just see the engage coming through, and a great dodge of the Death Slam coming through out of Saf.
That was really nice. And at that point, Listic feels a little bit awkward. Caught out in the open. The rest of VP still looking to try and signal some strength, but Dimov didn't have Shadow Transformation. Or he did, rather. Popped it. Still got blown up. Telekinesis, by the way, still active. Gonna get used right about now here as Parivision look to try and go for the throat. Here comes the combustion, though. Scary. Play With Me. If they get stunned up and blown up, they are not going to be a factor in this fight. They're very low. In fact, all of Parivision have taken a ton of damage. Listic, though, has seen better days. They're a little low. Together's able to eliminate Overkill. Now, Michaelis, Sharik, and Zergy, the last hopes for Virtus.Pro. The latter has had to go back to spawn. The former has been taken down, and it's all Michaelis having to retreat as well.
You know, I think Play With Me has shown us over the course of his Haze and his Wraith this game that his itemization is top notch. He has Ethereal Shift, which obviously helps, you know, eliminate a lot of the CC that can be thrown your way, but he also has debuff remover. Like, Zergy wants to get on top of Play With Me to try to get that stun, but then he pops a debuff remover, so he gets out of the stun, and then he gets the heal from it on top of that, so he's not even like necessarily easy to be killed. Like, the way he's itemizing here is allowing him to have that survivability in these fights, late game, crippling headshot as well. But because of like his raw aim and skill, he doesn't necessarily need more damage items to be effective in these fights. He just needs to survive.
Now, desperate defense for Virtus.Pro. They showed us some promise, they did. But that care that Parivision were taking around challenging mid-boss paid off for them. They still fight just that little bit better. And 40k souls for Play With Me, I don't think anybody is going to argue with that. They are terrifying. Crippling headshot picked up there. Very, very scary. A lot of defensive items here. We've got improved spirit armor for Prestus. Gonna be hard to kill.
This is big, Mitch. This is huge because we don't have Parivision having Saf or Play With Me here. Like, Virtus.Pro, you want to fight right now. Even though they have Rejuve, this is the time to engage because you know 2 of their biggest damage dealers aren't going to be around.
Prestus, though, still wants to fight. Still thinks that their favor is so low and they don't have a soul exchange available. They're going to give themselves up here. Zergy, though, taken out. Remember, Parivision trading 1-for-1 favors them because of the Rejuvenator, but Sharik is able to double down. A little bit ugly now. Dimov deals with Taz. Parivision down to 3. Play With Me already hoping to be a factor in this fight, but couldn't really get where they had to be.
Good use of the teleporter there to get away for Dimov. Oh, a little bit of pause coming through, but you can imagine that Obikim is going to die here. He has no frozen shelter to get away. I respect the play of Virtus.Pro. They were down 30k souls. That was your time to go to force a fight but it took too long for them to lock things in. Like Prestis just had so much survivability that they're going to be respawned back in 20 plus seconds ahead of anyone else on VP.
Oh, bro, man, play with me. You want this kill so badly. Overkim, though, healthy with so many charges of Frost Grenade. It's just still full health. But what is the purpose of this? What does this achieve?
Stalling.
It's unclear.
No, he's stalling. He's trying to buy as much time to get Michaelis, Zergy up. If he falls, it's okay because he bought, 10, 15, 20 seconds for those two big damage dealers that come through because they're going to need them to stop this pressure that's coming in on their base.
Yeah, I mean, these base bosses now are about to fall. Shrines will also suffer some degree of pressure as well. The Zergy's about to come back. Michaelis, 8 seconds away. That still feels like an age if you're Virtus.Pro. Scrabbling, trying to get back out and defend. Death Slam came out there as well, but our Shrines are now down. And the Patron's going to be knocked here. Virtus.Pro will have a chance to respawn, get out into the map, but Parivision make very good use of that rejuve.
Oh my God, Play With Me is just pummeling away. He's got just a machine gun attached to his hand, and they do pick up a kill on Sherrick somehow. 62 seconds on the respawn here, and Parivision, they might just be going for the finish.
I mean, seeing how gross Tesla bullets are, like at this stage of the game, you don't really need to get that close as Wraith to like have a really big impact over the fights, and you have enough spirit, especially with what's offered to you with some of those spirit items that you're using incidentally, like a hero shift, for example, that you're blowing them up with pick a card as well. Base Guardian's down. Prestis might have fallen, but Virtus.Pro have only 2 members active right now. And that weakened Patron is about to get a whole lot of love. And into the pit we go for Parivision. Alkfire also thrown down. They're here to try and finish the game. And Listic would like to keep that 100% win rate on Lash, but I'm afraid, folks, it is not to be. Parivision, Haymaker in the first round, take map number 1 off Virtus.Pro.
It's so funny seeing chat. Just every time Zergy plays, he always gets criticized on, I think it's never building Tesla bullets on his Wraith. And he just never builds Tesla bullets too often whatsoever. But we see Play With Me there. Like, I feel like Tesla bullets just synergize just so well with his 3. Like the attack speed you get because you do spirit damage per bullet, but also Tesla will proc spirit damage, which is kind of like double dipping, doing a ton of extra damage. And Parivision, I thought Virtus.Pro was going to be for sure the stronger team in this matchup, but Parivision proved me wrong. And we had questions about their composition as well. Like, how would they deal with the hard engage out of Virtus.Pro? We saw them do it with the lasso early on. Eventually, they didn't get to, or they didn't even need to use it anymore because they were just so overwhelmed with Play With Me having a huge soul lead. But credit to them, that was a fantastic match.
We got to talk about this. Let's bring Dan in because I kind of want to like pose this question. How good? I mean, we talked about these comps, right? First of all, they're very squishy. And I think that definitely showed in some of these late game team fights. Like, we did see a large number of like your improved spirit armors picked up both for Prestis and together. I think they were fearing what Dimov could do. Michaelis also speccing pretty heavily, of course, into that spirit damage. But with no front lines, it felt like there was a high level of variance in some of these fights. And even with a soul lead, it was not a guarantee for Parivision midway through. But let's talk about the roaming. Early to mid game, I feel like Parivision are everywhere. The holiday roams were sick. Those pushes out towards the solo lane to really slant it in Parivision's favor, in Saf's favor, were impressive.
Yeah, it's almost just like even making more of a meta point. It's interesting how the game's developing in a sense, because I feel like this level of harass that we saw out of the holiday isn't something that I saw to this extent before we actually saw Listic on Calico last week, where you're like, whoa. So, because normally what you're expecting is, and we used to talk about this all the time, okay, you look at a Paradox, you look at a Lash, they get their ults online, and suddenly they can start to use the ults to set up really powerful ganks that actually convert into kills or objectives. But with Listic on the Calico last week, or with Taz on the holiday here, you can see just off of like the barrels and the jump pad, just like abilities to have low cooldowns, you can get consistent, like very high impact pressure that goes into objective damage or kills, that goes into actually taking down your opponents, and also like forcing them to have to respond by getting their teammates over there. And that level of pressure was so high that it did allow, in this case, Parivision with Taz playing so well on holiday to completely dominate the early to mid game. Because normally, if you're going to be VP, you're going to think, okay, well, who do we have to keep down in the early to mid game? Who do we have to make sure on our team that we make sure they're having a good lane and staying on top of the farm? None of that could ever play into account because they were constantly having to react. So that, I think, for me is like really, really impressive, just seeing the power of the jump pad and the barrels and how utterly disgusting it is.
Let me ask you a question then as well, Dan. I feel like the hecticness of this game, it's such a double-edged sword because it worked so well for Parivision, I feel like, in the beginning, but we did hit some moments where VP started to turn some things around.
Sorry, let's That's crazy. I mean, were they just standing around on Alkfire forever? Like, what is this play damage?
Man. Yeah, you had a Kutsu bomb.
Yeah, I guess, especially when you full spec into it, it becomes so big, right? That layer there with Alkfire. Also, Alkfire is so busted if you have a Wraith that's actually fed. Because inside, inside Alkfire, you're taking like more weapon damage, which is pretty gross. I don't think it stacks with Tesla bullets. I think that's like spirit damage either way, but that is very, very gross.
Yeah, it augments the gun damage. And that was like the interesting thing where you were starting to talk about how Litz was maybe putting a bit more itemization into the gun damage, which kind of makes a lot of sense because you've got so much spirit damage between, Saf and also Taz on Holiday, like a lot of burst spirit damage that's disgusting. On top of the Wraith cards and obviously some of the bombs, the Kudzu bombs, and also, Prestis's, everything. There's so much spirit damage, but also there's a lot of gun damage as well.
For gun damage, a lot of those items that they sort of picked up, right? Which is interesting. Not like reverb or anything like that. We didn't even get to that point in the game, but I found that really interesting. How we saw that build. And it happened just as I think Parivision got a big lead, right?
It kind of makes sense though in the way that he itemized, because you don't want to like stack too much spirit power, because you have Litz who's gonna do spirit power damage, you have Tas, you have Saf, but also you want to like balance between like bullet damage, which you have Play With Me and Prestis able to do. So I actually kind of like that you itemize that way, because it kind of makes it very difficult to itemize defensively against that.
Well, folks, I'll be honest. You go, Dan.
Go ahead. Oh, the politeness battle. I was just going to say, I want to, always give a shout out to Jake, because he gave this terminology to me, which is the bog, where, between the Kudzu bombs and the Geist bombs, you get, and also the Alkfire, you get this, like, all this AoE. So it helps you to control a lot of space, which is really helpful with the playstyle they had. Because their playstyle almost, at one point, they were so committed to the playstyle of just like heavy aggro, like give up a lot of the farm along the map and just always emphasize pressure, that it almost backfired, because you guys called it out when they took that mid boss, they gave up a walker for it, and then they actually lost a second walker to it. And then instead of just falling back and just taking all the value on the map, because the rejuve gives you full map control, so you can farm the entire map, guaranteed like soul advantage, they just kept pressuring into objectives they didn't like fully commit onto them. They were just like pressure without the full commit. And then when they finally decided they were going to commit to a fight, it was kind of too late, and then they were backing off, rejuve ran out, and then the fight happened. And so it's like the worst thing ever. So that style almost like messed them up, but the fact that they were able to stabilize and just have Play With Me just like take over as a carry, because they got that to that late game point, that kind of saved them. But yeah, those Kudzu bombs and the Geist bombs enable a lot of like objective control because of the AoEs that they provide.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, folks, I'll be honest with you, not the most convincing opener here for Virtus.Pro, trying to defend their spot at the King of the Hill. Great opener for Parivision, though. They go 1-0 up in this best of 3 money match. $1,000 on the line, presented by our friends over at Intel. Stick around, of course, for map number 2 and see if Virtus.Pro can even the score after this. Welcome back, gang. First map of this best of 3 is done and dusted. Parivision actually take it away with some fantastic early game rotations and pressure, Jason, that never let up.
Yeah, and it honestly came back almost to bite them in the butt, because they got a little bit too aggressive some of those times and potentially could have had that game turn around against them. But you really have to respect how they didn't stop that aggression. And if you think back to like the Virtus.Pro versus One Win match, well, I guess they were named Buff and Jorts at the time, that's exactly what One Win did, was keep that pressure on them. You saw them try to like Zerg down the Patron multiple times, and eventually it didn't work out for them. But that's what's keeping Virtus.Pro like on the back foot. You don't give them time to think, and that's where you can really punish them as a team. But the question is, can Parivision do that once again? Because I think that's all going to start in the draft.
Yeah, does lightning strike twice? That's the question I've got. I'll pose that to ZP now, so we're going to bring him in to add some wisdom, of course, to what will be a very curious draft here. ZP, is Parivision looks very good, but can he get away with something like that twice?
I would say no. I think that while a lot of it was execution based in the last game, I would also point a lot of it on the draft, where Parivision got basically the best draft possible. I think that they're going to get all series long, where they not only got heroes that they are very good at, like securing the Wraith for Play With Me, but they also, the heroes they prioritized and the bands they got in, all were basically tailor-made to take away VP strengths, where you think about what VP likes to play. They really like playing Geist with Demov whenever possible. They've loved putting Listic on the Calico, and Zergy, I mean, his go-to hero after shaking the terrible 7 addiction was going to Wraith as much as possible, right? And on top of it, Paradox is banned, so Mikhail couldn't even play Paradox. I don't think Parivision is going to be able to just absolutely put a stranglehold on the VP draft a second time around. It just simply will not happen.
They have to have like a response of like letting one of these heroes get through that they were so successful on, or not having the ability to pick them. As we see with the Wraith ban coming in, there's no chance for Play With Me to play Wraith now, which means what is he going to fall back to? And we know it's generally Haze, it's generally Warden, maybe Mirage. So I feel like that whole style of what they just did is almost just stopped just from that one ban alone.
Yeah, I mean in DFN, I think we've seen like 3 Haze games and only a 1 in 3 win percentage there. Michaelis having the Paradox ban out again, not a huge surprise. Parivision have been targeting that pretty closely, but there is still a ton that's out on the table here for Virtus.Pro. We had an interesting draft CP like last game where there was like no front lines for either team really. Like none of the Warden Abrams, no one was really looking in the tanky direction whatsoever.
Sorry to jump in really quickly, ZP. This has got to be a Geist or a Viscus, right? Like off the bat.
I would, the way it's been, I even wouldn't be surprised if it was Geist off the bat, just to secure that for DMOV, because VP has basically put Geist in. Yeah, okay, Geist makes sense. I just think this is one of those cases where, because VP has used Geist as the glue in their lineup, this is not so much that I think Geist is seen as like #1 early pick, as much as it is that Parivision was just looking to deny Geist specifically, so Virtus.Pro had to change their draft priority to do Geist earlier.
You saw their 3% pick rate for first pick as well. Like that really emphasizes that you don't generally see Geist picked first, but considering it to be the glue for Virtus.Pro, it makes perfect sense. Now, what we're seeing out of Parivision, I'm not happy seeing Play With Me play Mirage again. I feel like he can't be the playmaker he is on Mirage. It's like seeing Young Calc go back to Abrams after seeing his Shiv, which we'll obviously have later on today. Like, Play With Me is one of the biggest playmakers in EU, one of the biggest playmakers on the team. Don't put him on a hero where he can't be that playmaker. But with Wraith gone, I'm thinking, what can he be that playmaker on? I don't know. We haven't really seen it. His Haze gets shut down by Virtus.Pro nowadays.
So we had Geist and Viscus both go in the first round, like you guys had assumed. Viscus, I mean, yeah, first round pick ban is 38%. But yeah, both Viscus and Lady Geist were getting picked like 4th, 5th almost in some cases. Now they're really early in the draft. So these two teams know each other quite well though, but it's interesting to see the priority on those two heroes shifting so much more towards the front end of our pick ban.
I think Calico comes in here for sure. You think about what Listic in recent memory has been able to achieve on the Calico, and yeah, okay, Calico comes in. That's directly for Listic. And also, I think there's a world where Play With Me is not playing the Mirage. Like, there has been flexibility for Parivision where they can decide, okay, Play With Me, rather than you playing the Mirage, we're going to have Prestis play the Mirage, and then that frees up Play With Me to do something like a Haze. But I do think the big adaptation here of just banning Wraith was more value add for VP than it was negative, because yeah, Zergy doesn't have a chance to potentially get Wraith depending on the draft, but I really think taking away from Play With Me downgrades him even if he goes for the Haze.
The Warden's open too, right? For Play With Me, we've seen that from them on occasion. We've seen Warden get attract some second round bans so far today. Pocket going to come in again for Virtus.Pro. They still seem to believe in that pick. It's one that's been pretty underwhelming for us today. For VP, it's 2 wins and 3 losses so far. So can they reverse the fortunes of Pocket? We'll see what Parivision's last pick of this first round is before we head into another round of bans. It is the Play With Me Haze.
I mean, he is an insanely good Haze player. He's definitely the best Haze player, I would say, in the world, in EU and NA combined, right? But the problem is, the later the game goes on, the better response Virtus.Pro has to it, and they're able to shut it down. Yeah, you can get the unstoppable, but ethereal shifts shut you down, curses shut you down. So for Play With Me to have the success we've seen in the past, he has to do it early on, and Parivision have to win early on to make it work, I'd say.
Is this teasing a Saf Grey talent potentially?
It might be. I mean, the Bebop Gang Bandit is going to give Saf more room on the Great Talent should they go for it. But also, if you're a VP, you can just ban it. I mean, you've seen what Parivision has been able to do with Saf on the Great Talent. It won them the best of one. It was a huge pain overall. I think banning the Great Talent here, actually a very, very smart ban should VP decide to go for it. And yeah, they take down the Great Talent. So
I
give you half credit for that one too. Like, you know, I'm thinking on it is like, you brought up first, and yeah, it makes perfect sense, because especially once the Bebop is gone and you don't even have that as an option to, you know, mitigate some of Great Talent's power under best case scenario.
force them to use their ban on the Grey Talon is really interesting. We saw a Grey Talon previous game there from Parivision. Didn't have to be hugely impactful. I don't think Grey Talon got out of hand. Didn't actually get a lot of the souls fed or funneled into it in that early to mid game, so never needed to become a real threat. So here's the Warden. Comes out for Parivision.
So, ZP, I'm looking at this. I was expecting Yamato actually to come through instead of Warden, because you already have very heavy bullet damage out of Haze. Mirage is a little bit more of a hybrid, I guess you could say. Warden definitely would be going the gun build unless we see that infamous Spirit Power Warden come to light here in EU.
Well, yeah, EU doesn't like Spirit Warden, and that's one of the things that NA will use repeatedly now to just flame AU. And NA has felt very good about themselves as of late, and they do not like EU drafts. But when it comes to Spirit Warden, they might have a point. What's interesting to me, though, draft-wise, is that Kelvin being prioritized a little bit earlier this time around. And, you know, the interesting thing about that to me is that I don't think Parivision had any intention of deviating from the Ivy. I think especially with how Litz played it in the last round, I think there was going to be Ivy no matter what. Yeah. So I think Kelvin actually could have been saved for last pick here for VP. But what they pick up here will be interesting. I think it might... Do they pick Infernus now for Zergy? I don't think they need to. They can leave Infernus for last. But, okay, they go for it now, so either way.
I think, ZP, you are almost 100% on VP's draft so far.
Well, he admitted, though, to, like, looking at the drafts ahead of time earlier today, right?
I did not. I did not. No, I was looking at the Mo 1v1s. I will not stand for this slander. It would just take away the fun away from me.
He's also a Green Bay Packer fan, if I remember correctly.
Jason loves getting a reaction out of you.
Yeah, Jason is now just spreading incredible slander. It's unbelievable.
Actual rage baiting in the commentary booth is
says
crazy.
Diet Coke is like the worst drink in the world.
In the big 2025, Jason Kaplan is just out of control. Here's an Ivy.
I can't hit you on that one, yeah.
We were dead right. Yeah, the Ivy now comes back in here. Let's look very good on that again. The bog, as Jake put it, something that you need to worry about. You know, a lot of bombs that can be thrown down, and of course, Alk Fire for like probably 3 at least different heroes in this game is going to be something well worth looking out for. Not a hero that ever gets banned, but we was still let's get that early lead and yeah, picking up an active reload. All of a sudden, like we're sort of chasing down a kill can be pretty scary. The Abrams comes in to round this out. So you have a Warden Abrams frontline here for Parivision.
If this were NA, Shiv would be incredible value for VP. But VP has shown that they're not as big on the Shiv. Well, EU in general.
I mean, Listic plays it.
Yeah, no, Listic has played it, but EU just collectively decided to just, you know, gentleman's agreement Shiv out of the game. I mean, it's not gentleman's agreement. They just don't think Shiv is very good right now. But yeah, last pick, Mo and Krill. Okay, that does make sense, especially with EU playing more Mo. It's kind of, you know, some teams favor Mo.
Never played, Virtus.Pro never played this in DFN. They've never played the Mo and Krill here.
Which is interesting.
Yes.
Well, usually it's been played by teams that like Aegis Aurora, right? Where they would use combos like Yamato, Mo, and use the Mo to basically feed the Yamato. But,
or Vindicta, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't mind the Mo coming out here for VP.
It actually works really well because remember I said before, like the Haze has a lot of value until Virtus.Pro can get like Curse or the items they need to like shut him down. The Mo and Krill alleviates that early game pressure I feel like that a Haze can have. And then you force Unstoppable to come out really early, or Play With Me has to come in these fights super late to make sure he doesn't get Mo and Krill ulted, because once that ult's down, like that's a lot of pressure gone from him. Not to mention the fact that you can stop him from shooting. You can blind him with your pocket sand. So you eliminate a lot of damage that Haze can do on top of that. Also, the gun warden. So the Mo and Krill, I feel like fits really well and helps alleviate like any early game pressure that potentially Play With Me could do.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this sort of plays out. We talked about like the ethereal shift as an option to like, you know, shrug off this pressure. But if you are already stunned, you are not going anywhere. You're going to you know, remain locked down and won't be able to do anything like that. So that's kind of why the Unstoppable is so needed, but it's really, like we talked about, a much later game sort of consideration. So a glance here at the drafts, guys. Like, how are you feeling now? Virtus.Pro, you feel like they lost out hard, ZP, in game one?
No, yeah, in game one they lost basically everything they'd like to play. This time around, Dimov gets to play the Geist. Listic gets to go onto the Calico. And, you know, I think the Mikhail Pocket was probably a weaker showing than you would normally expect from Mikhail in that last game. All in all, they got way more of what they like to play, and they also got to stack the deck with, you know, a much stronger front line. I think Parivision, by comparison, they had the downgrade in some areas where it's going to be Play With Me on the Haze, not going to be able to use the Wraith. I also think the early game for VP here is going to be just very scary effective when you think about how Listic has normally run the Calico, right? It's probably the most aggressive Calico player we have seen since Calico has come out. So I think for Parivision, there's a world where the early game can go really, really rough for them. And in terms of people that might be getting ganked repeatedly, I believe it's Together on the Warden. I definitely think that Listic is going to be in that Warden lane a lot early on because it's one of the easiest gank targets that they have available.
You know, ZP, I'm looking at Parivision long term in this game, and I'm just wondering where's the damage? Because Hayes will hit a point where she just isn't going to be as effective in this game because of just the way Virtus.Pro are going to be able to build. I mean, obviously, Unstoppable is going to help a lot, but I feel like they don't have a lot of damage outside of Play With Me, to be honest. Whereas like Virtus.Pro, I mean, Demov's going to consistently do a lot of damage. Listic's going to do a ton of damage. Michaelis is always going to weaken them. And Zergi's going to have a lot of single target damage because of the way he builds and like skills. I feel like there is a lack of damage on Parivision's side.
Spirit Warden, Jason.
You can only dream.
What I'll say is I think for Parivision, they're a team that needs to be ahead with this comp for the most part. Like there are some scenarios where they could easily set the pace. A good example would be, though you don't see it as much nowadays, should Saf get decent clearance, right? Saf get 2-3K soul gap ahead. You can have scenarios where you have Saf and Play With Me just roaming around and, you know, absolutely crushing the VP frontline. And if anything, I would say resource allocation between the front line of VP and Parivision may set the tone of the game in the early part here. Like the difference between if Listic is ahead versus Listic not ahead on the Calico, absolutely massive. So I think the rotations you see starting at around like 3K souls may just set the entire tone for the rest of the game.
I miss Kenny F a little bit here because it's a bit weird, honestly, not like seeing any Vindicta looked at. Also, Europe not wanting any Shiv, no Holiday in this draft is really interesting. I think it's pointed out by a few people in the chat here. So EU drafting looking pretty conservative, if I'm honest with you. And that Jason poses the question, where's the damage on Parivision's lineup? Where does it originate from? That's fair enough, right? We saw Let's do a lot with the Kudzu bombs, and we know that Warden can develop into a threat in terms of that gun damage, but nothing screams late game damage carry on the Parivision side outside of the Haze.
Yeah, and that's kind of want to see how Parivision go about this. Like, we know Play With Me is going to have a strong start just because of the caliber of player he is and how good he... Oh, that was a really nice puddle punch coming through. Damn. And Sherrick going to be the first one to fall here. But yeah, Play With Me, very strong player in general. But we know Virtus.Pro can like hold on long enough to get the items they need to kind of counter that. I mean, Metal Skin is going to be a massive item for them because of the gun damage that Parivision have, that maybe the overcommitment of gun damage that Parivision
There's like no spirit damage is your issue. If we look at it, right, between like the on the Spirit Warden, you know, but outside of that, yeah, it could be a little hard to... I'm telling you, bro, I'm manifesting that.
What I'll say before I leave you guys to it, Spirit Warden or no, is look for Play With Me, the really pressure lane one. If anything can make Pocket's life a little bit miserable, it's a combination of Abrams from one side and Hayes just setting up really good ganks from the back. That is enough to even make a Pocket sweat in lane, and if any Hayes can do it, it would be Play With Me.
Yeah, there's smoke bombs. You're right, ZP. You can allow you to get pretty active if you're Play With Me in crossing over towards the lane, and you can certainly leave Prestus to push a wave out with the gun comfortably enough. This is lane number 3 right now. You see down towards the bottom of your screen, Sharik there was trying to push up a little bit. Again, a very nasty little crowd control centric lane. A lot of lockdown between the Mo and Krill and the Kelvin. So Litz is trying to stay clear of them right now.
In that lane, like the healing, I mean, Mo and Krill can score and heal himself. Kelvin can heal with the frost grenades. Obviously, Ivy can provide some healing, and so can Viscous with the cube. But I don't think outside the beginning of this game there's really any kill potential. And obviously, I say that Obikim's already getting extremely low.
I like that. I mean, that's just pure gun damage. I think Obikim is getting a little bit too close, bro. Litz is it's kind of wild. But again, like at this health, I don't know how often you don't see every Ivy like taking the Hollow Point ward as one of their like earliest items. But if you are staying healthy, if you're in a high sustain lane, then you're always benefiting from that weapon damage buff, and you're actually, pretty scary. Like, it's an extra 20%. That's not a small amount. Plus the spirit shield health doesn't go astray either. And you can just burn people down with that gun. Let's definitely someone to look at if you want to see an Ivy that knows how to take those edges.
Thing is, I feel like the only opportunity he has to pull off these early game kills is only in the beginning. Like once you have the frost grenade hit level 2, you can heal up. It's very difficult to like burst them down like this. I think they're getting a little bit lucky, but obviously taking a perfect opportunity to go for these fights in the very beginning of the game where they're going to be stronger than their opponents.
Dimov's in trouble here. Soul Siphon is there, but again, the Scarabs are returning some health back to Prestus, and he is just relentless with this gun damage. On the chase, he has tornadoes, but he doesn't need them. The Jin's Mark proc gets in that extra damage and secures the kill. And he can get out with this. That's nice.
I mean, we've seen Listic just be super impactful, able to just go for some very big dives last week. And speaking of dives here, Abrams getting very low, down to 100 HP with the heal off the minion. And he does escape here. But as we talked about, Play With Me needing to roam, potentially looking towards lane 1 to help out. I'm also wanting to see the same for Listic, because that's where we saw how overpowering he can be on Calico.
Okay, Zergy.
Oh, nice.
Ends up trading himself out there. This pushes right in under the Parivision Guardian. You see, honestly, like a quarter of the Guardian's health already been taken. Tornado catches on the Listic, a little bit scary now. Knife also heard that come in. You've got to respect Play With Me here. The roaming threat that they are. This is their home lane, though. Return to Shadows used, and that gives Listic the spacing they need to get back. Dimov also has to retreat.
Wow, look at the restorative shot, healing right, ammo scavenger. Like, Play With Me is definitely trying to be safe here and really build up a snowball later into these games. The healing right can help them a lot, especially when it comes to roaming. Take damage in lane, pop it while you go roam into another lane to go for the gank. But the unfortunate part for them is that they're really being pressured back into their own Guardian. So again, it's really difficult for him to roam around in towards lane 1 with the pressure that's being pushed by VP.
Yeah, Prestus has had to just go back to base. And I think that's why we see all these sustain items picked up by the Haze, because you want to... okay.
Barrage killing him.
Face full of barrage damage. That is wild. Just out in the open and couldn't dodge away from any of it. Parivision. Wake up, boys. You're 1 up in a best of 3 here. Zergy again punishing together. I don't think that's a very fun lane for the Warden at all, personally. And Zergy's been more than happy to get aggressive, even to the extent of trading, and has like a 1k soul lead on together.
Wait, the last stand with the airdrop at the same time, trying to catch out Obikim. He has to fall from this. There's no way he's going to survive. A great use of those ultimates together. And obviously with together dying in lane 1, you're not going to expect them to just randomly show up in lane 3. So they do have to swap some things around.
Wait a minute. Was that an airdrop?
Yeah,
of the
airdrop bust in.
Right. Because we look at him from below, and I thought he was majestic leaping, but it's way too early for that. That was really nice. That's exactly one of the characters you want to be airdropping in.
I've seen some of the nuttiest things out of airdrops. I was watching Ida stream one day, and they were losing this match. He had an airdrop Dynamo Singularity where he just carried Dynamo along while he was using Singularity, and he picked up enemies like a vacuum, and they turned the fight around.
Dynamo can Singularity while he's being
yeah.
Okay, that's a bit much, I think.
Same with 7. You could pick him up and move him around the map while he's popping his storm clouds. So it's hilarious to see it, and I feel like there's going to be an evolution of the meta at some point with those.
Some really important kills coming up here, though, for VP, and just in terms of the roaming. Also, like a lot of solo laning pressure. We're seeing that generated. Both solo lanes are doing really well for them, Zergy and Michaelis. I mean, man, if there's any 2 players you need to lead the way, it's going to be those 2. You have the souls on the right players right now. Parivision sees Blitz pretty farmed up. Play With Me, though, quietly also has managed to sustain well enough in that lane, but it's getting a bit hot and heavy over there at the moment. They're being forced right on back. Prestus is being under a lot of pressure for a lot of this game. Zergy's trying to link up here, and okay, there's a combo being used over there that should and secure the kill for Zergy, as they're going to have their combustion back online pretty soon. Prestus, great parry. He's spent all game being dived so far. Unfortunately, the Guardian isn't really locked where it needs to be, and Dimov's able to dig a little bit deeper to get that kill in the Mirage.
Your boy Press is having flashbacks to last week when he was on the Grey Town, constantly being dove by Listic there. We did actually see Together escape that Mo and Crow ultimate with the dashing out of Zergy over onto lane 4, and Dimov on the high ground here with the Traveler going to be coming through, going for the chase.
Okay, Tornado was good, but the damage, where is it? Dimov down to half. He doesn't have a soul exchange available. This should be the kill on the Grey Town, and it's nicely done. And now you have the ability to at least chunk back some of this health on the Guardian. Together is in deep trouble, folks. I'll give it to you straight. There was nowhere to go, and they got caught by the concussive combustion. They got absolutely cooked.
And Zergy's still sporting a pretty big lead over Together. I think he's going to be back in time as his lane's going to crash in towards his Guardian. But we're seeing, again, Virtus.Pro with the ganks they're pulling off being very aggressive early on, which is very unlike the old school Virtus.Pro we've seen. And Play With Me, he's only at 5k souls, but even when he has bad starts, speaking of bad starts, you might see Mokro caught yet again here, trying to escape, and he does get the ultimate on to Play With Me, but the backup's not there.
Okay, well, a little bit late. Listic does get there, but realizes the window wasn't there. That was why the combo ended up coming out there. Sharik, a little bit greedy, taking that camp, I think, in Parivision territory. They did have a good push on the wave, but yeah, that was a bit of a freebie they just gave up. Play With Me, respecting Listic. That Haze not quite at the late game damage carry point yet. Still needs to respect this a little bit. So decent amount of fighting, and again, there's going to be pressure over towards his lane too as well. Listic is healthy enough to continue to be a nuisance.
And the thing for Listic is, when we saw him last week and we praised him so heavily, is because he did get opportunities in the beginning of the game. He created ganks that allowed him to get fed, to be this assassinating tiger that just shows up randomly across the map. But this time, a lot of his ganks haven't really necessarily been successful just yet. They've been shut down. If anything, they had to commit like 3 players to pull off the kill onto Prestis. He hasn't been able to roam like we saw last week. So I feel like Parivision has done a pretty good job of not letting Listic play Calico the way we've seen before.
And we're seeing the solo lanes here for Virtus.Pro continuing to look really, really good. Not a whole lot that can be done about them at the moment here. You've got an Abrams and a Warden that are forced into soloing. Not great. Overcome here. Dealing with the goo ball. Pretty scary issue, especially that burst damage just cutting through the frozen shelter. He's trying to get himself away, able to pop Healing Nova and run for it here. A little bit scared about the airdroppers. Litz is definitely threatening here. What is this? Fast and Furious? Oh, man. Tries to come in. Oh, my goodness. Was that a connection off the stone idol? I'm not sure. It looked like he brushed him on the way down.
I'm not 100% sure, but I know some abilities have like a ridiculous y-axis in terms of like hitting things up high above you. And Zergy, he's getting hit up here under the Guardian, and Stop will be coming through as well.
Coming in hot. Cold front used there as well. Zergy falls. Finally, Saf, with the help, of course, of the other Scorn solo laner together, able to get rid of that Zergy kill. But in comes the own Krill here. What is afoot exactly? It doesn't look like there's going to be any chance for Sharik to make anything of that, but maybe pick up some farm. Obikin was looking, though, for a kill, and he does chase together down.
I kind of really like how we're seeing how aggressive Obikim is with these frozen shelters. Like, they clearly have a game plan. It's whenever frozen shelter's up, we go for a dive onto Guardian and pick up some kills. I can't, in recent memory, think of any other Kelvins who were that aggressive with their ultimates to provide these early game kills. And we're only 11 minutes in. We've had 2 Guardians taken, compared to last match, where I'm pretty sure Virtus.Pro had no Guardians remaining at this point.
Yeah, it was a very, very busy early game. Parivision, again, we had questions about their comp, but their solo laners that, weren't really able to get going, weren't ever really able to leave their lanes as well, so had no impact on the inner side of the map. Here comes Zergy, doesn't want to give him any quarter. Cold front used, flame dash in, and a lot of that fiery damage spread over the fight. So much so that he's the cool guy that looks away from explosions to allow Obikim to deal with Prestis. And that will be another Guardian picked up here. ZP, let's bring you in real quick. Parivision, the draft looked fine. We question the lack of damage, but the lane assignments seem to really hurt them.
Well, the interesting thing, too, with the lane assignments is that it wasn't as mobile as I would have expected. I mean, we talk about the idea of, like, okay, Play With Me, hits 3K, moves around. Very, very static lane-wise. Play With Me has just been kind of staying within lane 2 most of the game. A few adjustments here and there, but, both sides sticking the, basically where they started to an extent. It has not been as aggressive as expected. And Virtus.Pro, they're totally fine with this, just because they've been winning the lanes outright, already around 9k lead, and oh man, Abrams getting into it, Mitch.
Yeah, absolutely mogged. That's big and brolic. Saf just turning up on Listic. And again, good to see at least some souls being, funneled in Saf's direction. They're going to need that durability.
Wait, no way.
Definitely a little bit scary to see Michaelis ahead by 2k souls here, and then an earn turn in, compounding the issue. Virtus.Pro now have a 9k lead.
Kind of surprised to see them actually let them take that like for free. But yeah, it's a 9-10k soul lead now, but again, a lot of that is in these objectives with these 4 Guardians down. Obviously the earn turn in does help quite a bit, but like, look at the soul allocation. Michaelis, 13,000 souls. I feel like you're VP here, you start doing exactly what Parivision did before. You start forcing some of these fights, and Parivision shouldn't really be able to hold up against you as long as you don't let these objectives go down. But I guess the scary part is Play With Me's on 10k. He's starting to like lead his team here, but where's his effectiveness going to come from? He's got to start looking for some of these kills in this mid stage of the game right now if he wants to be effective later.
That's being chased out of lane 3 there as we head over to Prestis with a 3 versus 1 against Obikim. looking to try and chase that Kelvin down, but help has arrived. Mo and Krill already on the scene. Play with me, having to slide away from that. So Parivision will look to disengage, I think, while they can. Together, just here in that lane number 1. We've had a couple TP uses, so there might be a fight brewing here as well. Mo and Krill has made their way across. Parivision don't want a bar of it. I don't know if they can get Saf out of there alive. I think Abrams is in deep trouble.
This is huge, though. I mean, we're seeing a push on lane 4, a push on lane 3. Listic just doesn't really care about Litz, who's attacking him while he's trying to do some damage to the Walker. Parivision are forced to respawn with 2 players onto lane 4, which opens up a push onto lane 1 too. So this is very bad for Parivision. They're gonna start losing some walkers here and fall even further behind if they're not able to get a response. And with Play With Me Saf down, they just are not gonna have a response. Look at this, like, look at the map. Yeah. You have players on VP all pushed up in every different lane to apply this pressure.
This is a bit more what we've come to expect from Virtus.Pro folks. They get themselves the first walker of the game. Dimov is dead, extremely dead. But that is at least a pick that Parivision were looking for that relieves some of the pressure in this lane number 2. Elsewhere, Litz has had to hold the Calico at bay themselves. And honestly, it could be much worse. There's still a question of map control, though. There's definitely something that we need to see developed. And of course, we are now heading into the 15th minute of the game. We are developing here a bit of a heavy lead for Virtus.Pro.
And this goes back to what Dan said before, like your resource allocation, being behind over 10k and trying to commit just the right amount of resources in these lanes to stop pushes is so difficult to do with that deficit in souls that you have, that you almost have to overcommit normally where you wouldn't, to stop these pushes from coming through. And something is going to give. Some crack in that shell is going to show. And that was eventually lane 1 as they got that walker.
Okay. So we're going to find around this urn, apparently. Getting messy here for Zergy. Hit with a slowing hex. It's the barrier there for the Mo and Krill, and we goes. Flame Dash is going to get them out for the time being. Now onto the Guardian, though. Overkin hit with a shoulder charge. Big melee hit, and that is going to be the Kelvin going down first. Parivision, relatively healthy, all things considered. In a position here to, do some work on this objective, but they lose Prestus on the periphery of this fight. And Sharik's been able to snatch up the urn here. Things start to peter out for Parivision in this lane number 4 as they've got to defend elsewhere. They're trying to push that lane number 1 while Calico's getting busy. Tass
huge.
Dominated. That's
huge because Tass is only defending lane 2. They're going to get a second walker here, which gives them a flex slot because the rest of Parivision are being kept occupied around the map. A fantastic 1v1 by Listic there. This gives a huge lead for Virtus.Pro.
Guys, there's no one who can answer this, is there? Eventually, labored together, gets over towards this lane. Traveler used here by Prestus, though, and you can see how serious Parivision are about securing this lane. Walker picked up. Urn now, though, in the hands of Parivision. And it is being airdropped away. You can see Listic also
Demov's coming
to fight this mid-boss for it.
He's trying to stop the urn, which he does. His presence alone stops him from going for the urn. We see Parivision overcommit players, not expecting a mid-boss to be done. And do they even have a response? I mean, they do have the bullet dance out of Play With Me, but there's still so much up and such a big lead for Virtus.Pro. I don't know if they're going to be able to steal. I don't know if they can possibly steal here.
It's actually going to be used there. Yeah, it's an easy rejuvenator catch there. No Abrams ultimate to work with. No stall mechanics or steal mechanics there for Parivision. And hey, now Virtus.Pro have themselves a good old-fashioned fight on their hands. Play With Me goes down first, which is worst possible scenario here. And VP, these walkers are about to get turned into mincemeat.
Thinking back to the last match, what happened when Parivision got the rejuvenator? Virtus.Pro responded by getting 2 walkers. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I don't think Virtus.Pro are going to let anything slip here. They're starting to pressure onto lane 3. Sherrick was pushing onto lane 4 during this entire engagement we had happen. And they're going to get a fight off the back of this too. Oh, a stun comes in and completely ruins the day out of MKLS.
Yeah, he should know that was coming his way, unfortunately. Doesn't matter. He uses the affliction. So again, more ultimates being committed by Virtus.Pro to secure these walkers. It's just how important it is for them to churn them up into souls. Task with a cube. Yeah, he's not getting away. The damage there timed, of course. Flying cloak thrown out, and we are going to be pushing straight into the base now. 1 walker still left over in lane number 4. That's being pushed up, and Saf is trying to hold it at bay, but Sharik just tears him limb from limb. That's another walker about to be taken down.
So Mitch, remember last game we were talking about Virtus.Pro had no Guardians down and Parivision had all 4, and that lead they had built up, if they could keep the momentum going, deny any Guardians from being taken from them, they would build up such a huge gold lead. Look what objectives Parivision have taken so far.
Yeah.
None. Absolutely nothing.
Guardian. And look at this.
And
map.
It's like a 30k gold difference now, and they haven't got a single objective. So if Virtus.Pro go back and buy, exactly, they keep forcing fights. They don't allow Parivision to get this objective, which is basically free souls at this point. then they're going to continue to stranglehold any sort of economy that Parivision can build up, and that turns into a win.
Yeah, watch VP farm the map now. I mean, they're starting with Parivision's camps, just going to eat them up all up. There's just not a whole lot you can do about it. Some of those items coming in, Diviner's Kevlar. All right, so we're definitely cooking already. The tier 4 item picked up for the pocket. Pretty crucial, of course, with the amount of spirit and bullet shield you get, plus that spirit power. So pretty scary to deal with the post-affliction pocket.
Just gonna into the shadows, just completely mitigate your entire bullet dance and force you back. That's cool. And then kill you.
Very cool. Michaelis gets there. Play With Me eventually goes down now. Listic is on the scene. They're going to be ready to deal with Saf, who does hit a shoulder charge, unintentionally catching Listic, I suggest, but that's 2 players down for Parivision. Virtus.Pro ready to fight, ready to make full use of this Rejuvenator now. Going after these shrines. Taz trying to defend them desperately in goo ball mode, trying to be as much of a nuisance as possible. Litz also is here. Kudzu bombs to try and push out some of these waves now. Final Stand also being used for Together. Parivision doing everything they can to keep these shrines up, and they do, again, at least get a catch on Oberkim.
You see how far ahead Virtus.Pro are when you have Dmob, Sherik, and Oberkim in the base attacking a shrine against 4 players of Parivision. Like, that's how far and how confident they are right now. And why wouldn't you be? Again, 30k in the lead. Michaelis on 24,000 souls. He's leading his team, and the next highest on the opposing team is just Play With Me at 16k. But as we see him being forced on the back foot and being this far behind, controlled any opportunity that he normally would use to grab a lead, to start to build up a snowball. And Parivision, like, they have no response. Like, Play With Me just can't do anything in these fights. And they tried on lane 1, trying to go for a catch on Listic. He got shut down though with the Into the Shadows. I think Parivision have to go back to the drawing board for game 3. I don't think there's any way they can come back from this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like it. Play With Me here trying to set something up on Zergy. Warpstone away. Zergy actually going to get away with it. That is pretty ridiculous. A lot of Parivision players grouped up in this lane.
Finally.
Guardian. Finally, Jason.
20.5 minutes in the meantime, Virtus.Pro are pushing lane 2 to go for your base Guardians, and this is going to be a solid of Virtus.Pro to not allow them to go back to base, because the rest of Virtus.Pro can just demolish anyone in their way here. Lit trying to do the best he can. There's a cold front out of him trying to get aggressive, and you can see his health dropping like a fly.
Yeah, they are just going to push the crud out of that. That lane 2 is going to be a problem. Michaelis doubling back pretty low after that skirmish earlier. Going to be able to buy up a little bit more and get back to business. Still 2 shrines active, by the way. Parivision doggedly fighting inside their base here. Is Virtus.Pro more than happy to put their feet up on the couch and dirty it. And the shrines now will fall. Expect to see this one start to get out of hand very quickly. Patron should be knocked here. Virtus.Pro can pull back now. Rejuvenator has expired, but mid-boss back in about
they're going
90
back in.
seconds.
They're healing up to go right back into the fight, I think. Especially with the catch on to, what was that, Together.
I mean, so far ahead, you could probably end here as well. I don't think there's actually a huge risk associated with doing that. Someone like Play With Me is just not really fed enough now. Let's see what the plan is for VP. 21 minutes 33 into the game, and they're not going anywhere.
Just a little bit of housekeeping in the meantime, trying to clean up anything they possibly can, waiting for that patron to transform. And like, what ultimates do you have to come back into this one? You don't have the size, I think, out of Saf. You have, okay, an airdrop with a bullet dance. I mean, Virtus.Pro, they will, it looks like, back off here, as mid boss is going to spawn in about a minute's time, but it's just a matter of time until they close out this game. Like, 40k difference. There's nothing on Parivision's side, as ZP saying to us, like, there's just no comeback power out of them in the comp that they have right now.
Yeah. No, nothing that gives them like a sneaky catch, right? They invested so much in like a pretty scary looking front line, right? In a game where Play With Me gets ahead early and maintains that lead, I think Parivision look really quite oppressive to play against this team. Now, though, Shu is absolutely on the other foot. Torment Pulse here. He picked up for the Moen crew. Love to see that. And the Geist is in a pretty good shape. That's a pristine emblem picked up for them now as well. Taz, not sure where they're hoping to go. Divine Barrier. They hope to give an edge in this fight. Puddle Punch doesn't quite connect. Now Together trying to come in with a binding word. I mean, if need to, Listic can just return to the shadows, and they're doing that right about now. So, yeah, impossible to get a catch on that Calico at all here. Saf, though, left alone to deal with Listic. Interesting. And Kelvin comes in to help them. Oberkim will assist with that kill.
Parivision just have so many souls banked up right now that they can't spend because of having no flex slots. They have like no tier 3, tier 4 items really to spend here, but they're going for the finish. And the patron, you know it's going to go down here, Mitch.
Oh yeah, this one is pretty cooked. VP pull off the patron for a time though. Play With Me does find that kill. Dimov falls. That's at least one for Parivision, but again, concussive combustion used there by Zerky just to try and cover it, and Tazia wasn't going to get away at all. Together now inside the frozen shelter up against a very low health Overkim who's about to have a grenade come off cooldown, and that healing is coming in pretty quickly. I'm not going to lie. He's chilling. He's back at 1200. Together now has to return to try and defend the patron itself. But Sap coming back off respawn rather. There's something you can do, but look at all this pressure inside the pit. Alk fire is used by everybody. Kudzi bombs desperately employed by Parivision to hold VP at bay. But now all is right in the world, folks. We have achieved balance in the sacred timeline. Virtus.Pro have evened up a series.
As we said in the draft too, like in draft 1, match 1, Parivision had so many good picks to counter VP's most prioritized heroes. Go into match 2 and they can't get those heroes and they immediately fall. Like this game was over, I want to say, like, you know, 10 minutes in because the lead Virtus.Pro were building, and Parivision getting 1 Guardian that entire match. That's rough, man. That is very rough. They had over 100,000 souls. They had no flex slots. They had nothing to spend their money on, or they had things they want to spend their money on, but they didn't have the inventory space to pick it up. And I mean, Virtus.Pro, when they get a lead like that, they run over you, and that's a little bit of a sign of like the old buff enjoyers. When they get like a 10-20k lead against you, no team can really combat them when it comes to macro.
Yeah, very much reminiscent of the Virtus.Pro that we know and love. Let's bring ZP in here to talk about this. We came out of the draft being like, okay, where's the damage? You know, where's at least the spirit damage? It was unclear where that was supposed to initiate from. It feels like Michaelis was the first player to really start to become untouchable in that game on the pocket.
Yeah, I mean, when a pocket gets a big soul gap like Michaelis has, they simply become server admin. They are not going to die to anyone, especially with the team comp that Parivision ran, where Parivision ran a team comp that quite simply could not actually come back when they got behind, right? They had no pick characters in the sense of you had no Mo for a combo, you had no Paradox for a swap, you had no Holiday for a lasso, or, you know, I was talking in Castle Chow Dan, no Dynamo, who EU for the most part doesn't play, but, you know, a Dynamo would be an option, right? There's just no game plan they had if they fell behind, and they fell behind because the lane pressure that VP was able to put on early on was super, super overwhelming. It began from the beginning, and as a result, Play With Me, who we usually see, you know, play way more roaming, play way more aggro, Play With Me was on house arrest in lane 2 for the entire early game. There was no, you know, storyline of Parivision able to get early pickoffs, able to get a little bit ahead, able to make the most of their team comp, which would have been good if they did have a lead. Instead, they fell behind, and they had just no mechanisms to close the gap.
I think as well, ZP, is that the wave clear out of Parivision in terms of like the lanes they were running was just really weak. I mean, Play With Me, he was paired with Prestis, so it's a Haze and a Mirage, and wave clear is not going to be a strong suit for you, especially when you're up against like an Ivy. You could, or sorry, not up against an Ivy, but like up against like a Kelvin or a Mo and Krill or a Pocket. Like any of these other heroes can easily push these waves against you. So he was never given that opportunity to push because the wave was always shoved against him.
Yeah, and I mean, the evidence of the lane pressure being ridiculous, as you point out, is just the fact that they didn't get flex slot all game. They got 1 Guardian. That's about as dominated in macro play as you ever could be. And also, I mean, Listic, a lot to do with that too. Just, you talk about why the early game pressure was just so ridiculous. Well, Calico not only gives you frontline that Virtus.Pro really loves, it also gives you really high early game pressure. And also, you talk about who are they going to kill. There weren't a lot of easy kill targets for Virtus.Pro. You're going to kill the Pocket easily? No. You're going to kill the Infernus easily? No. The Calico? No. Like, no one was an easy pick on VP at all.
Yeah. There's actually there's like a lot of invulnerability frames on the side of Virtus.Pro without even buying an ethereal shift, right? Between Listic and Michaelis. It's super annoying. Also, of course, Mo and Krilly can be pretty hard to burst down there as well. Zerky on the Infernus. The win rate hasn't been great, but he ends up getting very, very farmed and ends up becoming, of course, a very legitimate threat. But like you can see there, the player damage from Michaelis is pretty bonkers. Listic as well. Not investing fully, I think, in that tank style build, excuse me. We did start to see some spirit damage items coming through, but this draft for Parivision, a little bit lackluster. It falls flat in the end, and it ends up being a pretty massive soul differential at the end. We asked this at the start. I mean, I brought ZP in. I was like, okay, can you do that again? What we saw from Parivision in that first game. Can you get away with that comp? Great mid-game roaming and stuff like that. You said no, and then we saw a draft that kind of echoed that, right? It doesn't look like they were allowed to go for any of those comps that could set traps, find picks on a dime, and use them to snowball map advantage.
Yeah, and honestly, when you look at it, it's just so much of the story of the series so far has been in the draft. I think it was really good adaptation from Virtus.Pro to just change their draft in a way that protected some of the things they're really good at. And, Jason, we were talking about in the draft, but to me, I think the most brilliant thing that VP did that is unconventional, that, is kind of unique to this week of DFN, the high priority of Geist. Getting Geist early for DMOV, knowing that it was going to be a counter early pick from the other end in Parivision if they didn't.
Yeah, and it's kind of... I love seeing those adaptations, and I feel like that's what makes a good team a great team, is like realizing this is kind of like the bread and butter of what we want to be using in these matches. And Geist was a very big problem for them when it came to the other match right before. But I mean, clearly, like VP, they had a game plan that was probably one of the most dominant performances we've seen since the Eagles-Chiefs game. And going into match 3, like they are going to be on a high. And for Parivision, at least for them, they have the choice of getting first pick, right, or second pick. Like they still could get that dream comp they had in match 1. So for me, it's about Virtus.Pro. Can you prevent that from happening this time?
Well, folks, we have a tied up series. Virtus.Pro have done it. They are determined to maintain their spot at the top of the hill. So don't go too far. We'll come back after the break for our money match decider here in our Deadlock Fight Night number 13 for Europe, presented by Intel. We'll see you shortly. Well, if there's one thing we know about Virtus.Pro, Jason, is when they get a lead, they're very unlikely to give it up. That's exactly what we saw in game number 2. I got the pocket ahead. It was a classic Michaelis games, folks. Absolute vintage from him. And the rest of the team really came alive around him, shutting Parivision out of the game and taking us to a decider map.
It makes me think of, if any of you out there are CS fans of Virtus.Pro way back in the day, they were called Virtus Plow for a reason, is that they just demolish you like a bulldozer. And that's exactly what they did in this match. And that is just a true testament to getting the right org to pick them up, to live up to that name. Yeah, I think is if we go back to the drawing board of like the whole draft phase, like match 1 looked really good for Parivision. They stole away the Geist, which I'm expecting to potentially see being locked in right away as our first pick yet again. But what does kind of interest me is Holiday wasn't chosen last game. It wasn't banned as far as I know. Yeah. And that was like a really good instrument for TAS to create opportunities for his team in match 1. So I'm like curious, why did they decide to not actually run Holiday this time, which could be that playmaker that ZP talked about to get yourself in a comeback situation?
Yeah, I mean, let's bring Dan in here and talk a little bit about what we should expect coming into this third game, because I did think that the absence of Holiday was pretty conspicuous, especially when Paradox is not available to be chosen. And obviously, we know Holiday is especially good when it comes to shutting down those channeled ultimates like the Death Slam from a Lash, and that wasn't necessary in that last game. But still, the roam gank pressure is still so potent.
Yeah, all of Holiday's abilities are really sick. The only thing that maybe is a bit more selfish, I suppose, in one sense, is like the one that helps like the bullet damage. But like most players are not going to be really skilling that as a priority, and you'd be taking everything else, because jump pad, the barrels, the lasso, these 3 abilities have a massive utility in team fights, to initiate, to defend, to attack, to everything. So yeah, it's surprising when you see them perform so well with it. Yeah,
non-cheaters will not take crack shot.
I mean, no, just saying, non-cheaters will not take crack shot.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that we go back to it, because the pick at least, because I mean, I don't understand what the logic is, because it's not as though it's like a specific pick that's like, oh, it's to counter this or to do this. It's like, no, it's like actually universally all this utility is applicable to good pressure in the early game, and also be valuable later too. So, and VP talked a lot about comeback material, and the lasso helps to provide that too.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you sort of start a fight on your own grounds. I think having like a form of hard engage is really important. And the lasso it's quite long range. I mean, it's deceptively long range. I think people don't expect it to be, and then all of a sudden they're like halfway across the lane and they end up getting caught and dragged in under a tower. It's also really good. It just instantly shuts down a dive. You just hit whoever's diving you, pull them under your turret, and it's good to go. So let's jump into our third game here. Draft is up first. Parivision will have the first choice of ban. We've seen Viscous banned first round. We've seen Paradox first round. Those two are the most, I think, frequently attracting those early bans, guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it stay the same way, Dan, honestly. Like, Paradox is for sure going to be gone. I wouldn't be surprised if Virtus.Pro take away Wraith again as well, because you shut down Play With Me pretty much just from that ban alone.
Yeah, and we talked about, like, in drafts where he gets a strong argument for him and his pull to go Haze. It's just like these days this doesn't really work out well. I actually don't know that there's been a win ever in like the recent like last few weeks when that situation's actually happened with him being on the Haze, because it just always seems like it's a bit out of place in terms of how it might synergize with other things, because there are synergies you can create like with Emma and Kroll. Like some setup characters can be very helpful, but Play With Me style with the Haze is also like very independent. But the problem is that I think his shenanigans are well established.
No, I like this. I like this because it leaves open Paradox and Wraith. So it's Parivision. Which one do you value higher, Paradox or Wraith? And Virtus.Pro is going to get the other one. I kind of like this ban.
Mirage is an incredible hero, but I have not seen a ban since he was first released. I think it's very cute. So yeah, Wraith is one of Paradox. That's so funny. You get one or the other. That is Virtus.Pro backing themselves in the biggest way possible, honestly.
He's actually one of the highest pick ban or pick ban heroes that we have in DFN across all regions at 95%, which is insane.
Because he's first picked like all the time. I wonder what the breakdown is, but I'm certain it's way more pick than ban. Yeah. Paradox
first round pick ban 58%. First round pick 41%. He is the second highest first pick hero in both regions.
Yeah,
so you're right.
Like, you guys, but I would have preferred to have seen like the Wraith give away the Paradox and to replace the utility, the Paradox, pick up the Holiday, because of again how like well it did and how it's not prioritized as much in the draft. I feel like you get a bit of a steal there, but
I agree with you actually, because I don't think, besides like Litz on the Ivy, I don't think anyone on Parivision does the same amount of damage and has that playmaking potential as Play With Me. So I feel like you need to set him up as your biggest priority and then worry about the rest of the pieces to fall in. So I agree.
Like I said, yeah, you can't even play Mirage, for God's sake. Like that is an option for Play With Me, right?
You can play Warden.
Warden, that's right.
And they get Geist. Oh my God. So they get like 2 super high value picks for Virtus.Pro right off the bat. Against Zergy, 100% win rate on Wraith. So far within VP, 8 picks, 8 wins.
You can get a Calico,
and then you get Geist on top of that. Like, has anyone played Calico on Parivision actually?
I was about to ask that question too, because I was like, do they have someone that actually plays Calico?
They played it twice, 100% win rate. So they have.
Okay. That's a great question. I feel like you would take her here if you can. I think she's one of the highest prior remaining heroes.
Darlings.
Yes.
Play With Me's played it once and they won. Sass played it once and they won.
Okay. No worries.
I feel like it fits kind of perfectly into Play With Me actually, because I feel like Calico does have some carry potential, but also like we know how involved Play With Me gets very early in the game on his Haze. Calico kind of fits perfectly with that kind of play style.
Yeah.
I wonder if we deprioritize the Holiday now, because I know we didn't see in the previous one, but I just feel like the Paradox kind of like they step on each other's toes in terms of the role a little bit. Obviously, there's a little bit more aggressive you can get with the Holiday, but okay, the pocket is taken away. That's interesting. Yeah,
they're like, screw you, Michaelis. You're playing Lash in this game or something.
You definitely. I don't, unless you think that Parivision would dare ban Holiday in that second wave, you probably don't need to pick it at all in this round. You can let that one go. Try and find yourself something a little bit more.
Virtus.Pro played Holiday. They have played Holiday once and they lost.
Okay. I mean, you do need
there either yet, by the way.
You do need some Sinclair.
Bound to fight.
Okay. Warden. Very, very reasonable, very normie pick, I must say. Yeah, so we are going to be asking the question of like where the playmaking potential is, because you don't have access to Paradox here. You didn't secure the pocket either. You're not sure. We're not sure if they're going to lock in the Holiday.
Bebop. Now hear me out. D-Moss played it before. It's the only time we've seen Virtus.Pro play Bebop. I mean, we know Michaelis can play Geist too. And we know Listic can play Geist. They have, and Sherrick's probably going to be on the Warden, let's be honest. But they do have that overlap in hero pool between like those 3 players. And Bebop wouldn't be a bad like hero to pick up against this comp if you need that hard engage potential, or that like pick potential, I should say.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Warden as well is just also like a middle finger to Play With Me just extra, because like just so many of his options are taken away with that Warden as well. And so I mean, are we going to see Play With Me pick up something else? We're going to see him on the Calico, like, or are we going to see the Haze coming into play at some point, which often happens in these spots?
Ooh.
Do
you go Ivy here and put like Litz in an awkward position because Calvin's gone? You take away his Ivy? Support Sinclair?
No, give me some Dynamo. Give me the quad knockup Dynamo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's only going to be a problem for Parivision in like 9 months.
Oh, yes.
Dynamo is great, and it does definitely give you a lot of good potential for comebacks. Also, if you've got like a lineup that's like, I can see like Dynamo being pretty nice against the Geist, Warden, and the McGinnis. Like, you know, when you've got like a lot of frontliners or heroes that like to play close together in those packs, obviously that's the setup for Dynamo ults. So it's something you got to be careful of. So I could see it.
McGinnis.
It's so funny just to see like both these two teams kind of picking heroes the other team wants to play.
Yeah.
Like as you mentioned with the Warden, the Pocket, the Paradox, the Calico, like they're really trying to focus down each other. Nice. I'm still looking at like, what is Play With Me going to play in this comp for Parivision? And the Holiday, I mean, I don't know. You're saying nice, Dan. I'm kind of like torn because Paradox and I mean, it's technically like two different ways of pick potential for sure. But then I feel like you do lack a little bit of damage by securing these two heroes at the same time.
You have a great roaming team. The problem is that there needs to be a lane to roam too. And if everyone's roaming, you don't have any presence in that lane. You might just get poked down, pushed out of it, kind of thing.
Oh no, okay, that's what we were talking about. So, but I actually don't mind that Holiday and Paradox for one reason, which is that VP's got, again, like VP's going to have more of a like a tanky front line that's going to be a bit more clumped. So actually having extra ways to pull people out of that clump and kind of like pull them out of that formation where they're going to be stronger in team fights is kind of nice, because for Parivision they don't really have as much strength there, like head-on team fights.
I mean, I'm seeing a comp that wants to abuse the crap out of this Warden as much as possible. Yo, it's happening, bro.
Back.
7 has returned. Okay. Is this good, or are we just excited because we haven't seen it yet?
I'm wondering if he's going to go a more supporty Echo Shard stun build. Because that is one thing that can really decimate Parivision, is having double stuns to just not let them do anything.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. And obviously, yeah, I mean, yeah, I actually think that actually makes a lot of sense. You can play more of a gun McGinnis. Have the 7 support. I'm here for it. I want to see the Sinclair with the hexes though, because I really feel like that's super disruptive as well, especially with the buffs on that hex. But
who's on who now for Virtus.Pro? If we're putting Zergy on 7, because I think he's the only that plays 7 on the team, who's going to be on the Wraith? Because Demov's going to be on Geist. Eric's going to be on Warden most likely. Obikim's going to be on McGinnis. Does that mean Michaelis is going to be on Wraith or 7?
Yeah.
Oh no, but then who's on Yamato?
This is a very interesting draft guide.
Yeah. This is starting in my head, man.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff here.
Okay, so let's talk. Your solo laners here for Virtus.Pro seem pretty well positioned. If you do end up having the Geist, I don't know if you want to put Warden in a duo lane, but you know, if you have like a Geist Yamato solo lane, that seems pretty reasonable. Are you putting 7 in a duo lane? I'd like to assume
Warden 7 in a lane together. But I almost want to see them split up. But Warden 7, you hit a stun, like you put a stun on someone and then a binding word, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
or I mean, the same thing works with the wall on McGinnis. So you can put like Warden, McGinnis together, 7 and Geist, and then you have Warden and 7 be the ones to go from the dual lanes to the solo lanes to look for kills with their ganks, because they have very strong ganks with the binding word.
You have a lot of CC in this team. Like you have wall, telekinesis, binding word, the stun from 7. There's a ton of stuff to work with there.
I feel like VP has really good objective. Like I feel like they could do a very high pace on taking objectives, and I think it's going to be hard to actually stop that with all of the stuff that you just mentioned. I think that's going to be the struggle for Parivision, and Parivision are going to have to be very active and find a lot of these picks, whereas I feel like VP will be focused on just steamrolling objectives with their comp.
Okay.
Chat's going crazy. Yeah, with Listic on 7.
Okay. I am here for that.
Can't impregnate someone with 7, can you, Listic?
He did the thing. He actually said the name of it. That's crazy. Soul's Life Neo Apprentice is gonna. It's just the build, guys. Don't worry about it. Yeah, Listic 7, folks. That's what we're being treated to here. In the lane with the Geist, going up against Hayes Holiday in lane number 2. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Or are you leaving space for me?
Oh, I'm just thinking to myself, man, I bet you're more than welcome to come in, because they did split the lanes that I kind of expected them to with the Warden McGinnis and the 7 and the Geist. So like these solo laners for Parivision are going to be under so much pressure, or should ideally be under so much pressure.
I just do one more call out, which is that we might see Shriek using the last stand a lot for just taking objectives. And that's something to watch out for, because I think that's how VP get ahead in this game is by taking objectives and like split pushing them and just playing the macro like more effectively. All right, cheers, lads.
All right, mate. That was an interesting little group up there for the Virtus.Pro lane tours. We got absolutely hammered by one of those barrels and then finished off by Play With Me. So Soul's being funneled in the direction of the haze early here. I can't believe we're actually getting flack for not quote unquote knowing Listic would be on 7.
Yeah, I mean, heaven forbid that anyone else plays 7 on the team.
The chat is full of legitimate competitive players, by the way.
They're all Eternus.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But I will give a shout out to Hydroflare saying that if VP picks Sinclair, they could have copied Paradox ult, Holiday ult, Calico ult, Pocket ult. Like there would have been a lot of ults to actually copy to give your own pick potential and comeback potential if needed.
That's another whole layer, I think, to once we start to see Sinclair get used more frequently. We'll see these Calico in the solo lane here up against Dimov. Who we saw in game number 1 dove a whole lot. There was a ton of pressure on the Yamato here. I don't really know if that's part of the gameplay for Parivision. There's a drift already over towards lane 4 though. That is the Warden of Sharik trying to assist with Zergy, putting pressure down on together. That is the pocket, of course, for Parivision.
So Zergy likes to go the ball build on 7, where you just max out your 1 and you just have these like giant balls help to like push lanes and control fights because the slow it gives. I'm curious what Listic's gonna go for, and in my head I'm still leaning towards like the stun build would be really sick out of 7.
More likely you want something to be able to shove back, especially like against the Ivy. Could be like a bit of a pain. Outside of that though, not a lot of like real strong pull. Prestus, okay. Yeah, I saw that happening from the minimap, just getting pushed into. So that Listic MKLS lane, pretty terrifying just in terms of the quality of player you have in lane 2, by the way. But on top of that, just able to descend and get rid of that Holiday pretty quickly.
We do have the 2v2 in lane 4 and the 2 supports actually in lane 3 against each other. It looks like we will see, though, Sharik go back in towards lane 3 instead and leave Zergy to his own. But we see the pressure being applied by Virtus.Pro already onto this Guardian very early on. And that's Calico going to be coming in. Saf looking for some early damage. Might get the catch here onto MKLS, who's already low, and well, he's not going to have ultimate up anytime soon.
Also, yeah, no soul side or anything of the kind. So close, but stunned up here. I don't think there's a chance of chasing and catching MKLS. So the Geist is going to get away somehow. Hang around in the lane, though, of course, and look for a chance to continue to sustain.
Yeah, MKLS almost has ultimate up too, and he's sticking around, so he's gonna hit ultimate and he's gonna try to get in their face and do a soul exchange and then look for a kill off the back of that. That's ideally what he's gonna be going for. Less than 100 souls from that one. A nice carbine comes in to stun up Sharik's to get some damage back into him, and a first ultimate's online here. It's gonna be MKLS. You can see him still sticking around in lane 2.
And that might have been why as well. The proximity to the 3k souls definitely giving him a reason to hang around. Overkim also has a heavy barrage now. Sharik getting his ultimate. So Virtus.Pro just a little ahead, but it's really only like a 10 to 30 second window for most of these key ultimates. Dimov, of course, close to also be able to build that shadow transformation. Really fighting at length here with Saf. Power slash, that one would have really sealed the deal, but now I think you've overextended.
Already used the restore to block it too. Oh, the reload. If he wasn't reloading there, that would have been a kill, and also the right clicks, but Into the Shadow is now available.
Again, like people forget, Return to Shadows has a damage component when you disappear and when you reappear. So there's no warning about the first part of that. You just pop that and bam, they take like 150 base damage straight off, which is, in these 1v1s, it's crucial. It feels like an execute. And then you chase them and get the other component of that if you feel like it's going to be enough to kill them.
You can see them immediately head back. They realize Asaf's going to be missing. Now, one thing that we should mention, like 7, he did have a change, not in this patch, but in the previous patch, where that lightning charge, I don't know the actual ability name off the top of my head, but basically the extra ability you get off your ultimate, it's a 0.25 second cast time now instead of like a 2-second cast time, which makes his ultimate do quite a bit of damage and makes it, like, the thing is it stuns you and then you can't escape the damage that he does. So 7, I mean, a little bit of a tweak towards the ultimate, which we don't really see used too often in pro play. That's also another route that Listic could go for here.
Oh, you mean the static charge?
Is it the secondary ability off his ultimate? Like lightning overload or something like that? So it can stun you when when you're in the ultimate, you use the ability and it can stun a person in like an area.
I want to say it's that, but Yeah, we'll get confirmation on that. I'm sure someone in the chat will enlighten us.
Our Eternus viewers, all of them. Eternus 5 or 6.
I am scared for Saf here. They do have a Return to Shadows, but they are very, very deep in this lane. All right, they see this coming. Yeah, no choice, no reason rather to chase it any further. You can't really dive a Calico with much ease at all, considering they get so much damage on either side of the ultimate. Oh, Bullet Dance is going to hurt here. Soul Exchange comes in, but play with me unperturbed so far. 7 ultimate. Listic just steals that out from Michaelis' nose.
But you saw that was the secondary ability, hits it directly on Play With Me's head. Instant kill onto this one. And a great parry onto Prestis too, trying to go for the dive onto Listic. 5k souls for this man. And he survives with 130 HP. A big turnaround here for Virtus.Pro.
And the souls getting on to that 7 pretty darn early on here. We're going to have a moment here where VP just need to head back to base. A number of them healing up as they've sort of bought some time around the map. Parivision still have a lot of neutral creeps around this 3 lane, so there's a place to fall back to here. And here come the buys. Combat barrier getting brought up for Sharik. Some extra durability there. And of course, the mobility for Michaelis is a priority as they've taken that kinetic dash.
Let's take a look at those wounds.
Spirit Strike for 7. That's interesting. I want to see what Rowdy goes with that one. If it's going to be something he's going to sell later on, or if he's going to commit to that item. They're trying to get aggressive on the KLS, who's just trying to back away. He doesn't have Soul Exchange, so he's got to be a little bit careful. But again, Listic comes in with the kill.
The Spirit Strike, I think, is because you want to punch them in the face when you stun them. So feels like a decent follow-up there. Getting that extra damage. And also, like, it shreds the Spirit Resist. So
punching in the face. That's such a great idea.
Yeah. You get that, obviously, that Spirit Resist shred plus the extra damage up front. So seems pretty good. Prestis out of there very quickly. Do not want to fight Listic right now. Pop the Infuser as well, so he was ready to throw down and completely forces the Holiday out of the lane. Up we come once more. Maybe now it's time to put the pressure down on this Guardian for real. Listic now going to chunk it down.
Can you hold tab over this? I want to see what Listic's been level. All right, we'll get back to that later on. That's going to be the Shadow Transformation coming through. Into the Shadows, not going to be available here for Saf. I would imagine he's going to fall from this one. The parry's coming yet again between these two as a wolf followed up by the heavy punches, and neither of these two are really dying. I mean, if anything, Saf's actually healing up more than damage he's taking.
Okay. Saf here does no, let Dimov sort of slip away. It's an interesting parry. Oh my goodness. Yep. A lot of damage off that leaping slash, but Dimov wants to hang around. Power slash doesn't hit. Attempted a parry there. That was beautifully done. Saf ultimately falls there. Dimov plays it pretty close to the line, but connecting some of those key abilities.
That was sick, actually. I believe Saf got behind Dimov during that power slash, and he actually dodged it. Okay, so he's going for the three ability for the first leveling, which has a lot of damage, a lot of mobility later on too. You do a lot of AoE damage. You're seeing here, just hit anything around any of the players. I'm not hating this, actually. This is kind of interesting to see, like, 7 played a little bit different than what we've had in the past.
Yes, the million stuns in Spirit Slap is very nice. I'm not going to lie. Play With Me can't quite, of course, get away from this Storm Cloud. It expands so much faster now. That's something to bear in mind. Virtus.Pro making a 7 look pretty nice.
I'm not going to lie. I've been definitely messed up quite a bit in 7 of my games lately because you kind of forget about the ultimate being so strong, but it really has, like, changed the way 7's being played. And to see it here, I don't believe it's been played even in the one-win bombshell event, and this actually might be him dying here.
Zergy's been hanging around a little bit too long.
Are you kidding me? He gets the melee off as well. He dodges the damage for the bullet dance with the pillar. He gets the melee off for the extra spirit resist and for some extra damage for himself. And we saw Michaelis try to come in with the parry to try to save his life, but that was really, like, a really good individual play out of Listic, even though he died.
VP, they did actually play a 7 game recently in the one-win bombshell. Just the one though. So
who was it against?
I don't actually know. I don't have the other half of the graphic.
I'll look at it.
So we have started to see that just a little bit more.
Versus Maidong. They played it twice, actually.
Okay, that's pretty nice. Poor Maidong, man. So now we have a pretty substantial lead. 7k built up here, and it's where the souls are. I think that's probably most notable. The KLS is getting very strong. Zergy, though, has quietly been doing some good work, firing that up. Prestis obviously making use of that immense range. Here's Listic now again up with Michaelis. They're aware, of course, the Holiday on the top of that building. There's no really window here for Parivision to push back. There might be a rotate here coming through from Taz. Or they're just trying to push this lane 2 in. They might end up getting caught out because this is a fast rotate coming out from Virtus.Pro here. Not fast enough, though, to see the Paradox, although we do have the Holiday converging on this lane as well. Precious is coming for a bit of a sniff around. They want to try and chase him down, but Holiday bounces on out of there.
It's kind of crazy to me to see that Virtus.Pro has been able to be this aggressive and have this much pressure around the map when they have to worry about the Paradox ultimate, the Holiday ultimate, who can easily get picks for their team. But somehow Virtus.Pro are playing around it extremely well. Like paradoxical swaps, I don't think I've seen one. I might have been looking at my other screen just to check like which matches Virtus.Pro played 7 in, but I don't remember seeing any connect just yet. And Paradox is like one of those heroes that gives you that early game lead when you start roaming around with those 3k souls.
Has in trouble now. Tries to get the Paradox will swap it. Yep, Power Slash is going to claim that kill pretty easily. We were talking about the Storm Cloud earlier on. That lightning bolt you call down, it's a knockback, not a stun, but you still have a lot of them to work with on Virtus.Pro even outside of that. It's a 150 damage with 6 meter radius strike. Okay, here we go, Dimov. Why you come for a ride straight under this Walker? Shadow Transformation going to be used by Dimov here to shrug off that initial hit, and then we'll be able to walk on away. So ult for ult exchange.
Oh, you're right. It is a knockback. I just technically died to it that I don't get to see it knock me back. Last stand going to be coming through like we saw before. Just going to be focused onto the walkers to make sure you can siege it down while even taking damage that you're going to be healing. And that will be the first walker of the game going over to Virtus.Pro. The objective control continuing for match 2. I mean, they're up 16,000, 17,000 souls now. And this is exactly what happened in match 2. Parivision need to figure out like a game plan here. What can we do to start getting objectives? Because they're being denied everywhere around the map. They're not able to get a single Guardian. I don't think really any of them are too low yet either. And there's just so many souls that could be had by them, but the way Virtus.Pro are playing, they're just trying to stranglehold them yet again.
This is getting pretty ugly, but Virtus.Pro are taking their time. No huge overextensions. In fact, 3 of those walkers are still standing, but we have another game where Parivision have not been able to take any of these Guardians yet. Again, no part of the map where they've really been able to derive a big advantage. They've got some souls on the pocket, but they are behind all across the board.
I don't know, man. I know Play With Me is really good on Haze. And I'm not saying Haze is necessarily the determining factor of them getting objectives or not. But the Haze just does not really work for them anymore, especially with the amount of control, as we mentioned before. You have a stun out of 7. You have the Binding Word out of Sherik. You have the wall that can stun out of Obikim. You have Zergy who can use telekinesis. Like, you're at such a detriment here. And we do see the bolt dance going off while they're trying to run the urn at the same time. And Virtus.Pro looking to actually turn the fight now.
Okay, Obikim gets picked up, but I think that's fine for Virtus.Pro. They can accept that. Play With Me. Nice little parry there. Big stun up on Dimov. He's deep within enemy territory, but hey, Shadow Transformation is just what the doctor ordered for situations like this. Taz trying to get away. A big power slash knocks them very, very low. And they're trying to bounce away. I appreciate the movements. I really do. But together, is at least able to get a Guardian and found Zergy for their troubles. But this is now pressure onto walkers in lanes 2 and 3. We're going to have a drift off from Together, who's pretty low and doesn't have that affliction up. So I don't really know what they expect to be able to do with Play With Me, who at least is a little bit healthier. And this is the lane 3 walker now getting serious looking at. And Together walks into Listic's waiting arms. Michaela's definitely affected by that encounter, but able to walk away comfortably. And this will be 1 walker remaining now for Parivision.
Another flex slot unlocked. I mean, they're only missing out on 1 Guardian for their team as Parivision got it over into lane 1. By the way, Play With Me, that was a really smart read with that parry. As typically Yamato's, when they use the 2 to get towards someone, you can charge a melee attack during that. And he parries it, realizing that the attack was going to come through, or maybe it was just a light after, and gets the immediate parry back onto him. But the paradoxical swap comes through onto Listic. Unless he's just going to back away. But again, there's no kill potential there. There's no one there to help him out. I think that was more of a, I need to somehow stay alive here for Tass. And you don't want to see these used defensive like that. You want to see this used to get picks. And speaking of picks, Virtus.Pro are pushing lane 1.
Yeah, they're going to, of course, take that last walker away and be in very good shape. I mean, Surge of Power as well. Already picked up for Listic, which is pretty insane in his 3. Again, just like the more move speed, right? Which is already scaling, of course, on Spirit if you're playing 7, but more fire rate as well. So, yeah, just being able to get a lot of extra value loaded into that ability means that the 7 at 16k souls is getting scary. And everybody who needs to be fed, and even those that don't on Virtus.Pro, are having a great time of things now. A 26k Soul lead now with all walkers down for Parivision. I don't know how easy it's going to be to try and steal this away, but they're going to have a crack at it anyway. Parivision, get in there. And unfortunately, it will still be taken by Dimov. A little bit close here, but having a 7 ultimate in the middle of that pit definitely doesn't hurt. Now, we're off to take more of Parivision's real estate.
Are we just watching match 2 all over again? Like Parivision, they pick up the urn, they try to go turn it on their side of the map. Virtus.Pro immediately go straight for mid boss. And the comp they have, like you saw the Storm Cloud, you just can't really deal with Storm Cloud in that position at this stage of the game when Listic has 17,000 souls and no one on your team has crossed 15k except Guess Together, who just hit 15k. Ridiculous stuff here. Virtus.Pro, I think they're really showing that first match was a little bit of a fluke, and they're playing so much smarter, and they're really punishing every chance they get against Parivision. I respect trying to go in and try to steal away the Rejuvenator, but you're falling so far behind that this is just a complete duplicate of match 2.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And some really important items being picked up here for your Amber side. Crucially, the Intensify magazine, pretty big. Your Proof Spirit just amazing. Obviously, it's flat spirit power mostly that gives you. Team up there, maybe playing a little bit too close to the sun. That's a Rejuvenator that's well put to use. I think now these base bosses starting to get knocked over. Shrines will be next on the menu, of course. Virtus.Pro, of course, have got their key ultimates back. Final Stand's going to be there. Soul Exchange if needed. They are ready to fight.
And the respawn's going to be here for Demob too. He's going to return back in. I don't know if Prestis actually got the lasso onto Demob, which pulled him in and then into the Kinetic Carbide. I see it was on cooldown, but I'm not sure if he actually hit it. But either way, I mean, Tass is going to have the Paradoxical swap yet again. And Listic is going to get caught here. I think he's going to just die. 1v3, no chance.
Yeah, it's a bit too much damage. I don't know if you have to... Oh, yeah, you're very dead. You're very dead. Never you mind. That's a bag, by the way. That is a bag picked up for Parivision. Still a pretty significant soul deficit, but they have managed to claw it back a little bit now. It stands at 117k. But this is where VP get to fall back and basically farm the map. So expect to see those numbers become a bit more one-sided again.
I mean, look at the side of Parivision. They have a couple of jungle camps. At least the waves were pushing against them because they're rejuvenators, so they can get some extra souls for themselves. But Virtus.Pro, I'm wondering what items have been picked up recently off of the spike of souls they've gotten. They're only up 18k. But again, a lot of that 18k net worth they have is just basically wrapped up in these objectives. That if Parivision finally get a good fight, then they can push, get some of these, get that last Guardian down, get a couple of walkers. That soul swap, not soul swap, the soul lead is going to swap in favor of them. So it's really not too far out of the possibility for Parivision to win this. And compared to match 2, the comeback potential is there with the Paradox and with the Holiday.
It's not too bad. On an individual basis, the soul deficit, not too bad for Parivision here. But we talked about Virtus.Pro and their tendency not to give up those leads once they start to build them. This is a good time to check in with Dan actually and take some thoughts from him, because we're 20 minutes into the game and Virtus.Pro are not trying to jump the gun here. It's a pretty stately run through the mid game.
Yeah, I think it's kind of played out like we were sort of setting up, basically saying like, look at their comp. Their strat is going to be to just hammer objectives as quickly as possible, and they had full control over that. They had like 4 walkers, 4 guardians down, and it wasn't until like 16 minutes where Parivision finally got like a guardian themselves. So they settled back on just absorbing all the souls in the map, not overplaying the advantage. So they're playing it perfectly right now, and I think Parivision, they needed the picks, and they just didn't get that pressure from the early game. And I wonder, like, Taz is not on the Holiday, he's on the Paradox instead, so a little bit surprised about that.
Listic's pushing base. Just to bring this up really quickly, he's by himself. You're seeing Prestis immediately go back to deal with this. He gets a shrine actually
at the very least. I don't know if can Prestis Prestis can fight this, no dramas. Okay, yep, I understand the way you go for this. For the bullet resist, you pop the Storm Cloud. Prestis still able to, of course, just for those consistent gun hits. Some like pretty powerful items on there, of course. The Pristine Emblem going to be available on Azora, so gotta respect that. Doesn't quite pay off, but there was a shrine that was picked off. Now though, we talked about the issue. Parivision had all this peak potential with no damage to follow it up. Now they're starting to get to that point where we just saw Paradoxical swap, managed to catch out Sharik. They burst him down. Same for Overkim. Virtus.Pro do have to respect the punish potential that Parivision have on their roster.
Well, I'll say this at least. In a 1v1, if Hayes up against McGinnis and it's play with me on Hayes, you should never lose that 1v1. And then Sherrick was like alone 1v3, 1v4. I mean, you're seeing Parivision, the response right now is we got to start grouping and getting some of these picks, but they need to start turning it into objectives. And with the urn in the hands of Shark, he's just trying to bait them to try to defend, alleviate some of the pressure of them pushing out some of these lanes. There's no real chance that he's going to go for the turn-in anytime soon. And then Parivision, I mean, you just got to play around these swaps, man. Like, TAS has it up yet again. You're sending Play With Me to look for the 1v1s, which I think he should be able to beat Listic here in this situation. And you also have Saf rotating in at the same time and TAS coming over with the teleporter. They're really committing to this lane one to look for that walker.
Oh, yeah. Longer push here for Parivision, especially because Virtus.Pro have looked to try and shore up this position. Now kind of letting Play With Me a little bit solo. They're trying to go for the killer with the bullet dance, but do they realize Zergy's here as well? Oh, that's not ideal at all. A solo fire Play With Me thinks they have the edge, but it's more than just the 7. Wraith was there too. And now we're heading over to try and get this urn turned in.
Have to be careful. Zergy's going to be coming in. No telekinesis up for him. Listic's got to actually shove out the lane before he rotates in to help out, but they're just going to give it completely away. I mean, Play With Me is their big damage dealer. And with him dead, you can't realistically contest this, especially in an area, in a building, when you have to deal with the McGinnis wall. And you don't want to be dying anytime soon because that mid boss has come up in about 40 seconds time. And dying right now means you might not just be there if we see Virtus.Pro rush it.
Well, they're back in the game now at the very least here. Mid boss up in half a minute, so expect that to be the next location to look to pressure down. And again, Virtus.Pro pretty scary to try and take a rejuve against these guys, or to try and steal it rather. They do, of course, have the wall from Obikim, multiple stuns, as we mentioned. Abilities that are very powerful AoE in terms of, you know, Final Stand, and of course, Listic's Storm Cloud. You really don't want to go walking into those. I mean, it's a pretty scary comp to fight against in general. Obikim is just going to try and make sure they can see all of Parivision's movements here whilst Virtus.Pro push this lane number 2 in if they can. Boss is back. Time to look towards mid.
There's actually an insane amount of debuff reducers for Virtus.Pro too to deal with together. And the affliction is going to apply. We do see the go time trying to go for the catch, and they're going to catch out actually Demoff here. The shadow transformation and the wall comes in to buy him some time, and the rest of Virtus.Pro are going to be here.
Surge power being thrown in. Sleep does connect, but I don't know if you're getting away from this. Listic, man, hits hard. Skilling, of course, into that 3. And again, with some pretty important items built up. Big Spirit Core plus that debuff reducer. Yeah, you really don't want to tangle with him. I think, yeah, look at Parivision's health bars. That is ridiculous. Blitz together oh so low. Another attempt of Obikim to find a pick here. Parivision on the back foot in a big way. This is definitely where you start to tease at that mid boss just a little bit more. Player think back in 20 seconds. Taz was hoping to set something up there on the high ground. They've got to head for the hills. Saf also gets lit by that alchemical flask, so Shriek has info on where the Calico is right now. And they might look to turn this into just a straight push down the map.
I'm not sure. I mean, the thing is, Parivision have gone back to base to heal up. They're just trying to buy some time to sustain here. The rest of Virtus.Pro are still looking to push in, but I mean, Michaelis is low on HP. He has no soul exchange. Trying to get the catch on the task because his paradoxical swap is on cooldown yet again. The Lassos come through, and it looks like it actually netted onto Demoff for a kill here in Parivision. This is go time. You need to pick up these kills. You can have a mid boss here.
I think they swapped into Demoff with the, and then they had a lasso there as well. So much of their pick potential used, but now both of those ultimates are down. They've lost Play With Me as well. Their core damage dealer. Time Wall thrown up here, but Virtus.Pro are hitting very, very hard. Warpstone, desperation now. This Taz won't be allowed to escape. Forced to an ethereal shift on the rope, and the extra damage is all too easy to find for Mikhail S. That is dirty stuff. Together does at least pop the affliction now. It's a little bit dicey here for Zergy, who doesn't have the way to heal back through it. They're going to go very, very low, but there won't be anybody just to clap that 1 HP Wraith. As the smoke clears, though, Virtus.Pro don't make a clean fight of it. Demoff going to be back in the game soon, but they lose Listic on the back end. Still a 4 versus 2 on the field, and every reason to go for mid-boss.
They do have sustain here with the healing out of McGinnis. Good job by Saf to go into the backlines to deal with Listic, but they needed to deal with Zergy. He's dealing with lane 4 at the moment. You still could see quite a big turnaround here, but it's going to be, what, a 2-on-4 on the mid-boss? They back away. Okay, they're going to give it up.
Yeah, I don't
think it's smart to do so.
To steal this, just in case, though. We have the wall. We have everything. Even committing that Warden ultimate, a last stand. So now we have Rejuve. That is one up and ready to go. Urn also going to be picked up, and we'll see these 1 and 2 waves start to be pushed in. Virtus.Pro, again, let the game fall into a bit of a lull where Parivision get to flex their muscles and do what their comp does best, which is isolate some individuals, pull them out of formation like we talked about in the draft, and set up some kills.
I mean, you can see Virtus.Pro giving respect to the comp, like you're saying, with the like pull out individual players and go for those kills and then snowball a fight after that. I mean, they're 20k in the lead, 25, 27k in the lead at the moment. Typically, you would see them, you know, rush in and close out a game like this. But considering you have that double pick potential with the Holiday, with the Paradox, they're just trying to be very careful about this. And I don't hate it, considering it's now effectively a best of one. You win this, you win $1,000 and you're in again next week. You lose this, maybe you're not even re-invited next week.
And you have that double Colossus picked up here for Virtus.Pro just now. That is, represents a pretty significant power spike. I don't think that's hard to imagine. Of course, to remind everybody, it's the bullet and spear resist plus the slowing everybody around them. Parivision have a real in-your-face, fairly short-range comp, so that is going to be a nuisance for them, especially because the Geist and the Wraith respectively have them. Another own in hand, another attempt to turn in here for Virtus.Pro. And Tyson will be guarding over that turn in sight. Smoke bomb used there by Play With Me. They are still trying to find an engagement here. Paradox skill swap does connect here, but most of Virtus.Pro already dived into the fight. They don't mind being behind enemy lines. That's where they seem to thrive. Warpstone at least is going to get Taz out of danger for the time being, but all this damage is too much for Together to handle. They did make use of the Affliction here, but it doesn't seem to bother Virtus.Pro whatsoever. Return of Shadows, pop out, a little bit of damage, but again, we're just not seeing this Calico build for big spirit hits, and that'll be the second invulnerability frame used. Also, the Ethereal Shift only gives them a brief reprieve before being dragged down. And now the base is about to get cracked open.
Return to Shadows, more like return to base here, as that's going to be Virtus.Pro walking all over the base of Parivision. There will be one more fight out of Parivision, though. Once they take down the Patron, the respawns will come through. And I think it's for Virtus.Pro. That was so smart to just bait the urn. You have Rejuvenator. All your lanes are going to shove. Parivision have to go back and deal with it eventually, or they're going to lose their base. And even with Virtus.Pro getting caught, they still come out ahead in this fight, only losing Zergy. That was pretty damn insane, to be honest.
I mean, it's about as clean as it gets. Parivision here reeling. Coming back off the respawn. This is another chance for Virtus.Pro to make sure they safely secure this win. You'll notice they're not going any deeper than that. With a weakened Patron now down in the pit, they can clean up some of this farm on the right side of the map. Group up and look to get this done. It's a soul lead now that's going to be basically impossible to surmount.
Death brings consequences. It's 40k practically. I'm not going to say it's impossible just because of, again, the Paradox and the Holiday, but it's very difficult to do. And the fact is, like, Play With Me, he's on 24k souls. Typically he would be over 30k by now, able to kind of keep equal footing with Virtus.Pro, but that's how strong this stranglehold has been. I mean, again, Virtus.Pro have 1 Guardian and 4 Walkers up. Parivision have nothing. They have a weakened Patron in their base, and there's so many souls on the field that they just can't get. Not to mention, a lot of the jungle still being denied by Virtus.Pro at the same time, really controlling all of their income and using that to their advantage.
We're getting to the point in terms of soul accrual here for Virtus.Pro that those tier 4s are now coming online. So everything you'd expect to see, the refresher, of course, for the Yamato. Like I mentioned earlier, the Colossi for Michaelis and Zergy, hitting that really nasty late game power spike a lot earlier than Parivision, of course, are going to be able to. We're going to start to see the net close in on them. There we go. Items just need to be refreshed, apparently. Michaelis on the Lady Geist this time instead of Dimog, showing that even without like a pocket or a Paradox, they're able to have a great impact on the game. They are absolutely motoring in terms of that farm. Buffs are about to come up here, and an easy thing for VP with all the map control to snap those up before making a push forwards.
And gun for Michaelis.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be happy with that one. And you can just see like the stringlets continue. Are they actually going to run this urn again? Like they're going to use the urn. The Rejuvenator is going to be gone, but they can use this urn to like bait Parivision to a fight. So I think they're going to let it stick around for a little bit longer and maybe look towards Rejuvenator. But we do see a little bit of a collapse onto lane 1, and both teams very hesitant to actually force the engagement. We saw, was it Together and Saf both rotating in, but they might get caught out here. Just Elite can be used to create some distance, as Demov's just going to respect it and back away. But they have the urn in the hands of Listic. He's at 34k souls, and they're heading immediately into this location. Again, with the McGinnis, this is the perfect position to fight, especially if you can get a good 7 ultimate off in this location. And Parivision, they can't contest. It's just too late.
I really feel like this is Parivision paying respect to these comp, rather Virtus.Pro paying respect to Parivision's comp, which punished them at about 22 minutes into the game when they had a couple of people caught off while they were trying to surge up the map and push in. So now very much not necessarily moving as a death ball, but trying to avoid situations where they get overwhelmed. Paradoxical Swap's going to catch Sharik here.
They're being closed in from behind, though. Look at this. Zergy's going to be coming in. Listic from the front.
He's bought nearly plenty of time, rather. Taz here, of course, into an ethereal shift. Going to be largely ignored now as Listic's looking for blood. Calico return to Shadow now. And that is going to be a pretty easy pickup, I think, for Listic should they choose to chase. But Zergy is down. It's one of the key carries on the side of VP. However, there are 5 more, as it turns out, that can step up and step into their place. Demuff surrounded right now, but healthy enough under, of course, the Shadow form. Attempt from Taz to parry. The wall came in there from Overkill to secure that. Either way, they would have been absolutely toast. That is a KS, though, an egregious one.
Just the launch of the body, the ragdoll physics. I mean, this should be game. 40 seconds left on 4 players. They can just run into the base. Make sure you have some minions here to get rid of that backdoor protection. And it would be Virtus.Pro closing this out. I mean, very methodical in game 3 compared to game 2, but they still get the win nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm going to go with this, of course, without Zergy. And this is the part of the game where you get to celebrate. All of our ultimates getting popped here. Parivision hit the GGs in the chat, and Virtus.Pro have done it, folks. They have secured for yet another week their spot at the top, winning $1,000 thanks to Intel. VP looking too clean in that map number 3. And there's a lot of things, Jason, we can point to that hurt Parivision, that let them down. We gassed up Play With Me pretty big in map number 1, but when they were forced over onto the haze, well, they didn't look so flash anymore.
Yeah, and I don't want to point out like a singular player, but Play With Me is such a good, impactful player that when he doesn't get on a hero that he can perform like that on, like we saw in Wraith in match 1, I think it's a drastic hit to Parivision. But one upside here for Virtus.Pro is just the amount of control we saw them have was great. I really love to see how they took what Parivision did against them in game 1, taking all its objectives, Virtus.Pro having no Guardians down, to them doing the exact same thing back-to-back match against Parivision, but not letting that lead slip like we saw Parivision do in match 1. So it's just really good understanding of how the macro game works. And again, to me, why they are easily the strongest team in Europe.
Let's bring DDK back in here and to sort of talk this out, because we kind of mentioned the conspicuous lack of frontline for Parivision in that game, and it definitely felt like there wasn't a lot of space in which Play With Me could even operate in, favorable fights on that haze.
Yeah, I think, strategically, do you have a strategy that kind of works against what the opponent's trying to do? And I think we looked at this like very, bulldozy type of comp in terms of the objectives, at least, and that they're going to be taking objectives. So either you need like a comp that's good at disrupting that, which we saw in game 1. We saw that approach where it's super disruptive. They couldn't get rolling, they couldn't get coordinated because they were constantly having to deal with all of these crazy pick off attempts from Holiday and all of that. But then, if you pick a strat that doesn't really have any way to mitigate what your opponent's win condition is, that leverages the strength of their comp, then you're kind of like dead in the water a little bit. And I think that's what we saw, because we saw this massive advantage taken on objectives. I don't know that last time I've seen that level of advantage. 4 Guardians and 4 Walkers when there's just 1 Guardian down for Parivision. That's crazy. And with that comes a lot of map control, a lot of the souls in the jungle. Like, they can just do anything. And then on top of that, if you looked at their comp, it's way stronger for taking a mid boss. So they're just like set up so well in the macro. And I can't really see anything that was there to mitigate any of that, either by the comp or the strategy from Parivision.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty succinctly put. I think we got to see the 7 taken for a run. I think Listic, was never in a position to even necessarily solo down anyone. We saw them actually build into like fairly defensive items, right? But still, obviously, the stim that you get on your 3 abilities was worth sort of maxing building into. Listic still ends up the game with like, I think, a huge amount of player damage, 14 kills there. So it's nice to see 7 back, and feels like, Jason, that they're more than viable.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think if it's viable as like your solo carry, because if you take Wraith out of the equation, would it have been as effective in this game? And obviously, there's so many different factors about it. The fact they got so many objectives does obviously play into this as well. But if you have Zergy go back to a 7 and you have Listic go to like a Lash or Shiv or whatever it might be, I don't know if the 7 would have worked as well. However, you got to credit to Virtus.Pro. In some of the locations they were fighting, the storm cloud could just be insanely impactful. The zone control, if we're talking about how Litz did it on Ivy, controlling a lot of the area with the Kutsu bombs in the prior matches, I feel like Listic also did something similar with his one ability to control areas and provide like extra damage over time as they are fighting inside of these like enclosed locations.
I think oh, go ahead, Mitch.
Oh, fine. I mean, we can have this discussion over this, I think, but let's move on and talk about our player of the match very quickly. Your player of the match is presented by Intel, of course, is going to be none other than Mikhail S. I think you had a great game. I mean, he's got to be happy with that. Of course, we got to see the Pocket, which was a classic Mikhail S game, but even, yeah, finishing off on the Lady Geist.
Yeah, not shying away from the Pocket in match 2, despite it going pretty poorly in the first game and just like taking over completely. And I feel like, that was like, a large part of one of the reasons why I wanted to pick Mikhail S for this is just because of him running it back and just showing how powerful it can be when he's given the space to work with and he's not just pressured down constantly. And that's a huge threat that had to be respected. And then he got so far ahead that the spirit damage and burst output and the playmaking potential became overwhelming. But at the same time, like, you have to obviously be able to play this. I think what is for some people a pretty specialist hero as well, to such a level that you can really truly leverage that against really good players. And Mikhail S like demonstrated that, which is great because we know Mikhail S for like great performances on so many different heroes, and to also add Pocket to that is pretty notable. And then going on to the Geist too is like Geist is an interesting one because Geist is like always there. You got a very important role in terms of your positioning in fights and your spacing and your different roles, consistent damage output, constantly tanking, and also like playing the edge with the life leech to make sure that you can stay in the fight as long as possible. But just like really straddling that effectively and balancing all those things. Like Mikhail S is one of the players in EU that has a very deep hero pool and is always like pretty playing very important positions, I think, for the team. And I think Geist has really become, I think one of you guys defined it as kind of like the glue to a lot of comps, and I definitely feel that way. So Mikhail S for me just occupied 2 extremely important positions in different roles and then just knocked it out of the park here today.
I mean,
yeah, Listic, man.
Listic. Okay. I mean, shoving down those objectives, but 34k play damage is nuts.
You really can't underestimate like how strong the 3 can be on 7. Not to mention the storm cloud. Like we saw the fight. I think it was the first mid boss take, and Listic just pops a storm cloud, and they end up killing like 3 people because the amount of damage he can put out, but also the objectives. Like it is ridiculous how strong 7 can be, and he's kind of been overshadowed by a lot of other heroes as of recent times. I'm trying to think, even in NA, do we ever see 7 anymore? And I want to say that I'm pretty confident we don't. We only fairly often, or not fairly often, very little see it in EU, and it's mostly just been Zergy as the champion of 7. But it's so cool to me to see like Listic playing this now, and he's been one of the players that's been kind of one of the weakest links on Virtus.Pro because of his very limited hero pool, thinking back to the other days when only he played Abrams. But he showed over time that he has definitely been a player who like realizes his weaknesses and has been actively working on that.
One thing I'll add to you about the 7 pick that I think is interesting is that I think this is something where if you look at the comp, I think this has a decent amount also to do with the comp and the strategy with the comp, because if you think about Listic and a lot of the engagements, Listic is able to basically have the ability to just pick up the fights where he wants. He's got Demorph in there on the Yamato drawing fire, Sharik also drawing fire, also Mikhail S. You've got like a nice front line, and then also you're worried about Zergy also doing like a lot of DPS. So Listic kind of fits into this spot where he's not like the highest priority target, but actually has, as you say, with those abilities, really high damage output. And then when you combine all of the utility you get with the ult for space control, either over the objectives or just in like an impromptu team fight, suddenly the 7 is looking really nice in that configuration. Not really as the hard carry, but to supplement the overall strategy of space control and taking the objectives, and then that allows Listic to get ahead on souls enough to get that crazy scaling on the spirit damage off of the active that he has too. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, pretty sick stuff. We have an interview for you guys. First time, of course, Deadlock Fight Night history. We've got the one, the only, the trackball god himself, Zergy, joining us on the show. So Zergy, mate, thanks for joining us. How you feeling? 2-1, close game, but you got the dub in the end. You remained kings of the hill.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good 2 games, good 3 games, sorry.
Now, were you a bit jelly seeing Listic get to take the 7 in and have a big impact? You're obviously giga farmed in both of those winning games, so you definitely have a good time. But we've known you to be a bit of a 7 player as well.
I mean, I gotta get him off Flash and put him on 7, so that's the better alternative. And there's Warden as well, of course.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here for a question. So Zergy, like we've looked at you playing over the course of like Buff and Joyers, now Virtus.Pro, and 7 was like the bread and butter of you as a player within the team. What happened for Virtus.Pro to make the mindset change of, okay, we need to get you off 7 and playing some other heroes? Like what caused that, and how did that kind of discussion go between you and the team?
There wasn't really a discussion, but we noticed the game pace was a lot faster. Games normally ended like within 20-25 minutes. And my playstyle playing 7, I just like farm, stay in lane, gonna keep my Guardian, then I just kill everyone at the end. So yeah, that's why we switched off. We started playing Infernus and Wraith. Games were a lot faster.
All right, I guess I have to be the one to ask this, but why do you think Shiv has disappeared from EU completely? Because NA still likes to play Shiv, but in EU is never picked, at least from what we can see. So what's that all about?
It's because NA people don't have to buy anti-heal. They don't buy Decay or Healbane.
All right, there we go.
That's gonna feed the mill for us for a couple of weeks. Zergy, mate, thanks for joining us. Thank you for the time as well, coming in and chatting with us. Yeah,
I got like 20 other questions to ask if we have the time.
I have had my producer tell me, if you read Discord, Jason, I've got 3 minutes.
Read. You know, I can't read. I'm American.
If you have a question for Zergy, fire it off. I'm happy to hear more.
I'm curious. What do you think? Because we're not talking to you about the team. I want to know more about the team. Like, what do you think makes Virtus.Pro, the team that you're playing with, stronger than these EU teams? Like, what are you guys doing right that these other teams haven't caught on to just yet? If you can tell us.
Well, all 6 of our players are extremely good mechanically. We all understand what to do and how to macro and move around the waves. And yeah, that's it really. We're also really flexible as well in terms of hero pools.
I mean, that's something we've seen, no doubt about it. The drafts have always kept us on our toes, Zergy. All right, take 2. Mate, thanks for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Defend your spot at the top. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Damn, I wanted to ask him, does he have a 6-pack on his thumb because he plays with a trackball mouse? And also, I want to know, like, how did this start? Like, why did he start playing the trackball mouse? I think he's one of the only 2 players in the world in esports that I know plays with a trackball. It was him, and it was a guy named Kerp in League of Legends who played top lane. And his thumb was it was crazy. He had like muscles on his actual thumb.
Dan, you're into this esoteric aiming stuff, aren't you, bro? You love this.
You know what? I don't know anyone that's into trackball and like aim training and stuff like that. So I'm also kind of curious about that. Also, the last person I knew playing trackball in Quake like gave it up in like 2012 or something. So like the trackball is like kind of weird, and it's like, but how do you get onto the trackball? Are you like a graphic designer and you're like then pick up the FPS games? Because like that's like the demographic of like
I use one for CAD when I make 3D design. Yeah. That's bizarre. I'd never use it though to try and play FPS. I mean, Zergy, he's a great interview, of course. A proper lad. Hopefully we get to hear from him next week, should Virtus.Pro go all the way. But there you have it. I mean, we are at the end of another Europe show here at a Deadlock Fight Night, and it absolutely delivered. Big fan, of course, of what we saw from both Parivision and Virtus.Pro. But of course, $1,000, care of our friends over at Intel, goes the way of Virtus.Pro. They will be taking away the honors. We're going to go to a break now. When we come back, we're going to be starting off with NA, a spicy region, one that apparently doesn't know how to buy anti-healing items. So I'm very curious to see what that looks like now that they've heard this wisdom passed down from Mount Olympus as Zergy is imparted amongst the unwashed masses. Will that make a difference in NA? We'll see. We'll be back after the break, of course. It's Hydra Nation who are still standing at the top of NA, but here in EU, all is well. Virtus.Pro still reigns supreme.